At 3 a.m., my daughter-in-law called me. Her voice was ice cold as she delivered the news. Your son drowned in Hawaii. I had him cremated immediately. He left everything to me. You get nothing. I did not cry. I did not scream. I just smiled. My son was a state champion swimmer who could hold his breath for 4 minutes. And the truth behind it all left me in shock. Before I continue this story, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to family who underestimated your intelligence. The phone rang. It was not a normal ring. In the dead silence of 3 in the morning, the sound was a violent intrusion. It was a sharp, mechanical scream that sliced through the darkness of my bedroom in Chicago. I did not wake up with a start. I did not fumble for the device with sleepy hands. My eyes simply opened. I lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling fan that was not spinning. I am 75 years old. At my age, sleep is light and the mind is always half awake, waiting for the inevitable bad news that comes with longevity. I reached out and picked up the phone. The screen was bright, blinding in the dark room. The name displayed was Tiffany, my daughter-in-law. We had not spoken in 6 months. Not since she told me that my presence made her nervous and that I should call before visiting my own son. I slid my finger across the screen. I did not say hello. I listened. I learned a long time ago in my 40 years as a forensic accountant for a major audit firm that the person who speaks first loses the advantage. Silence makes liars uncomfortable. It makes them rush. And when they rush, they make mistakes. Elijah. Her voice was breathless. It sounded like she had been running or perhaps rehearsing. Elijah, are you there? I am here, Tiffany, I said. My voice was steady. It was the voice I used when I sat across from embezzling CEOs who were trying to hide millions in offshore accounts. What is it? It is Marcus. She paused. The pause was theatrical. It was too calculated. Your son is dead, Elijah. He drowned this afternoon. We were in Hawaii. It was an accident. He got a cramp. I tried to save him, but he was too heavy. He is gone. The words hit the air, but they did not land in my heart. Not yet. My mind immediately erected a wall of steel. This was a defense mechanism I had honed over decades. Emotion clouds judgment. Data provides clarity. I looked at the digital clock on my nightstand. 3:03 a.m. That meant it was around 10 p.m. in Hawaii. He drowned this afternoon. I repeated her words. My tone was flat. Yes. It was terrible. Tiffany spoke faster now. The words tumbled out of her mouth like she was trying to vomit them up to get rid of the taste. The authorities said it was a tragic accident. I did not want to drag this out, Elijah. I knew you would not want to see him like that, bloated, damaged by the rocks. So I made a decision, an executive decision. I sat up in bed, my spine straightened. The joints popped, but I did not feel the pain. What decision? I had him cremated. Immediately. I have his ashes. I am bringing him home tomorrow. I narrowed my eyes. The darkness of the room seemed to press in on me. Cremated. Immediately. In Hawaii. A tourist dies in a water accident and the local authorities allow a cremation within hours without a full autopsy, without notifying the next of kin on the mainland. That was statistically impossible. That was procedurally illegal. Bureaucracy does not move that fast, unless someone pays it to move that fast. And Elijah, she continued, not letting me speak. She was afraid of the silence now. There is something else. We found his will in his travel bag. He wrote it last week. He left everything to me. The house, the investments, the insurance, everything. He explicitly stated that you are to receive nothing. He said you are too old to manage assets. He wanted me to take care of everything. There it was. The payload. The real reason for the call. A grieving widow talks about loss. A greedy predator talks about assets. She had mentioned the will in the same breath as his death. She had not even landed on the mainland yet, and she was already staking her claim. I see, I said. Is that all you have to say? Her voice rose an octave. She sounded indignant. Your only son is dead, Elijah. Do you not have a heart? I have a heart, Tiffany, I said. I also have a clock. It is 3 in the morning. When do you land? Tomorrow afternoon. Do not come to the airport. I need space. I will come to your house when I am ready to give you the ashes. Or maybe I will just mail them. Goodbye, Elijah. The line went dead. I lowered the phone and placed it gently on the nightstand. I did not throw it. I did not scream. I did not weep. I stood up and walked to the window. The streetlights of Chicago cast long orange shadows across my lawn. The world outside was asleep. The world inside this house had just ended, but I refused to mourn. Not yet. Grief is a luxury for those who accept the narrative. I did not accept this narrative. I turned on the lamp on my desk. The yellow light illuminated the room. On the wall opposite my bed there were framed photographs and shadow boxes. They were the timeline of my son's life. Marcus at 5 holding a goldfish. Marcus at 10 winning the district science fair. And then the wall of water. Marcus was not just a swimmer. He was a creature of the ocean. There were medals hanging there. Gold, silver, bronze, state championships, collegiate records. There was a photo of him crossing the English Channel 3 years ago. He is standing on the French shore, dripping wet, exhausted but triumphant. He had lungs like leather bellows. He had the buoyancy of a seal. A cramp. Tiffany said he got a cramp. I walked over to the wall and touched the glass of the frame. Marcus swam 10 miles in freezing water without faltering. He taught diving safety courses on weekends. He knew the ocean better than he knew the streets of this city. The idea that he drowned in a tourist spot in Hawaii because of a cramp was not just a lie, it was an insult to his biology. It was an insult to his history. And then there was the cremation. That was the mistake, the fatal error in her calculation. I sat down in my leather armchair. It creaked under my weight. I closed my eyes and let my mind work. I went back to my days at the firm. I remembered the case of the CEO who faked his death in a boating accident in Florida. He made the mistake of moving the money too fast. Speed is the enemy of the perfect crime. Tiffany was moving at light speed. She cremated him to destroy the evidence. There was no body, no autopsy could be performed on Ash. No toxicology report could determine if he was drugged. No coroner could look for bruises on his neck or water in his lungs. She turned my son into dust because dust cannot testify. And the will, found in a travel bag. Who brings their last will and testament on a vacation to Hawaii? People bring sunscreen. They bring swimsuits. They do not bring legal documents disinheriting their fathers unless they plan on dying, or unless someone plans on killing them. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk. It was locked. I took a small key from a hollow space inside my bedpost and unlocked it. Inside there was a black ledger, a moleskin notebook. I have used these notebooks for 50 years. They contain the details of every fraud I ever uncovered. They contain the patterns of human greed. I opened a fresh page. I took my fountain pen. I wrote the date at the top. Then I wrote subject Marcus Booker, incident alleged drowning, suspect Tiffany Booker. I began to write down the timeline. The call time, the tone of voice, the specific words she used. I had him cremated immediately. I underlined the word immediately twice. I wrote down the financial motive. He left everything to me. My hand was steady. My handwriting was precise. This was not the diary of a grieving father. This was the case file of a forensic investigator. Marcus was my only child. Clara, my wife, died 10 years ago. She made me promise to look after him. She told me that Marcus had a soft heart, that he saw the best in people, even when it wasn't there. She was right. He married Tiffany 2 years ago. I saw it then. I saw the way she looked at his house, not him. I saw the way she calculated the cost of his watch. I saw a shark circling a seal. But Marcus was in love. He told me I was too cynical. He told me I spent too much time looking for criminals and I had forgotten how to look for happiness. So I stepped back. I let them live. I let her isolate him. I let her cut his visits short. I let her answer his phone. I engaged in what I call the long observation. I waited for the slip. Tonight was the slip. I looked at the photo of Marcus again. His smile was wide and genuine. He looked like Clara. "I am sorry, son," I whispered to the empty room. "I should have warned you louder, but I will not let you disappear into the wind. She thinks I am just an old man. She thinks I am a retired gardener who plants roses and watches daytime television. She thinks you get nothing means I am powerless." I closed the notebook. The snap of the cover sounded like a gunshot. I stood up and walked to the closet. I pushed aside the old coats and the wool sweaters. In the back there was a safe bolted to the floor. I spun the dial. Left, right, left. The heavy door clicked open. Inside there was not just cash. There were files. Copies of every bank statement Marcus had sent me before he got married. Copies of the deed to this house, which Tiffany thought belonged solely to Marcus, but in reality was a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. She thought she inherited the house. She inherited nothing. The house reverted to me the moment Marcus's heart stopped. If his heart actually stopped. I also took out a burner phone, a prepaid device I kept for emergencies. I dialed a number I had not called in 4 years. It rang twice. "Yeah," a voice answered, rough, sleepy. "Dante," I said, "wake up." Dante was my nephew, second cousin technically. He was a ghost. He lived in a basement in Detroit surrounded by servers and empty energy drink cans. He was a hacker, a white hat mostly, but he owed me. I kept him out of federal prison when he was 19 and hacked into a credit union just to see if he could. "Uncle Elijah," Dante's voice cleared instantly. "It's 4 in the morning. Is everything okay?" "No, Marcus is dead." There was silence on the line, then a soft curse. "How? Drowned in Hawaii. Tiffany says it was an accident. She cremated him immediately. She claims she has a new will." "That sounds wrong," Dante said. "It is clumsy," I corrected. "It is sloppy. I need you to work. I need access to the hotel security servers in Hawaii. I need flight manifests. I need Tiffany's bank records for the last 6 months, and I need to know who she was with. She does not swim. She could not have pulled a 200-pound man out of the ocean alone." "I'm on it," Dante said. The sound of a keyboard clacking began in the background. It was a rapid, rhythmic sound, the sound of war drums for the digital age. "Give me 2 hours." "Go deep, Dante. Find the dirt. She thinks she wiped the slate clean with fire. She forgot about the digital footprint." "I got you, Uncle E. I am sorry about Marcus." "We grieve later," I said. "Tonight we hunt." I hung up the phone. I went to the kitchen and made a pot of coffee. Black, strong. I sat at the kitchen table and watched the sun begin to bleed into the sky. The light turned the gray clouds to purple and red. It was going to be a beautiful day in Chicago. Tiffany was on a plane right now. She was probably sipping champagne in first class, looking out the window, thinking she had won. She was thinking about the life insurance payout. She was thinking about selling my house. She was thinking about how easy it was to fool the old man. She did not know that the old man had just opened a file. She did not know that the nothing she promised me was actually a declaration of war. She drowned my son. She burned his body. And she thought I would fade away. I took a sip of the bitter coffee. "Welcome home, Tiffany," I said to the empty kitchen. "You have no idea what you have just walked into." The sun had not yet burned off the morning mist in Chicago when the invasion began. It was barely 8 in the morning. Less than 30 hours had passed since my son supposedly drowned in the Pacific Ocean. A grieving widow should have been paralyzed with shock. A grieving widow should have been surrounded by family weeping over photographs. Tiffany was not weeping. She was operating with the cold precision of a corporate raider. I was sitting in the living room nursing a cup of lukewarm tea when the front door opened without a knock. She did not use a key. She used a locksmith. I heard the grinding of metal on metal, the heavy click of the deadbolt surrendering, and then the door swung wide. Tiffany stepped into the hallway. She was not wearing black. She was wearing a tailored beige trench coat and dark sunglasses that covered half her face. She looked like she was arriving for a fashion shoot, not a funeral arrangement. Behind her stood a man in greasy coveralls holding a heavy drill and a tool bag. He looked at the floor uncomfortable. He knew this was not a standard service call. I did not stand up. I stayed in my armchair, wrapping my hands around the ceramic mug. I let my shoulders slump forward. I let my mouth hang slightly open. I assumed the posture of the defeated, senile old man she believed me to be. "Who is that Tiffany?" I asked. My voice was thin and trembling. "Why are you drilling the locks?" She did not even look at me. She marched past the living room, her heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. It sounded like gunfire in the quiet house. "Change the front door lock," she ordered the man. "And then open the office in the back. The safe is inside. I lost the combination." I stood up slowly, using my cane to push myself up. "Wait," I said. "That is Marcus's office. You cannot go in there. His papers, his work." She spun around. She took off her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry. There was no redness, no puffiness, just the hard, bright look of adrenaline. "It is not his office anymore, Elijah. It is my office. Everything in this house is mine now. The lawyer is drafting the paperwork, but I need to secure the assets. I need to make sure you do not lose anything in your confusion. Confusion. She was building the narrative already. She was establishing the baseline for my incompetence. She signaled the locksmith. He walked past me, avoiding my eyes, and headed down the hallway to the study. This was the room where Marcus designed skyscrapers. It was the room where he kept his sketches, his dreams, and his financial records. It was a sacred space, and she was about to violate it with a power drill. I followed them. I stood in the doorway and watched. The locksmith worked quickly. The sound of the drill biting into the wood of the heavy oak door was a physical pain. It whined and shrieked. Wood chips fell onto the carpet. Within 2 minutes, the lock was destroyed. The door creaked open. Tiffany pushed past the workmen and entered the room. She did not look at the photos of her husband on the wall. She did not touch the architectural models on the desk. She went straight to the wall safe behind the painting of the Chicago skyline. She did not know the combination. Marcus was smart enough for that. But she had brought a professional. "Drill it," she said. I stepped forward. "Tiffany, please. That safe contains his personal letters, his savings." She turned to me, her face twisted in a sneer. "Savings that belong to me, Elijah. Do you have any idea how much debt your son was in? He was drowning in it. Pun intended. We are broke. I need to liquidate everything just to pay for the cremation and the transport. So shut up and sit down before I have you removed." I sat on the small reading bench in the hallway. I watched. The locksmith took 10 minutes to breach the safe. When the heavy steel door swung open, Tiffany practically shoved him aside. She began to pull things out with frantic hands. She was not looking for letters. She was looking for bearer bonds. She was looking for the emergency cash stack Marcus kept for contractors. She grabbed the thick manila envelopes. She grabbed the leather binder that contained the deeds. She grabbed the velvet pouch that held his grandfather's watch. She stuffed them all into her oversized designer bag. She was looting the dead before his body was even cold. "You are stealing," I whispered. It was a calculated whisper, just loud enough for her to hear, soft enough to sound weak. "It is not stealing if it is mine," she snapped. She zipped the bag shut. The sound was final. She turned to the locksmith and handed him a wad of cash from her pocket. "Get out. Leave the front door key on the table." The man hurried away. He wanted no part of this family drama. Now we were alone. The house felt smaller. The air was thick with the dust of the drilled wood and the scent of her expensive perfume. She walked over to me. She towered over me as I sat on the bench. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of notebook paper. She tossed it into my lap. "Read it," she said. I unfolded the paper. Her handwriting was jagged, rushed. It was an eviction notice. It was not a legal document. It was a threat written in ballpoint pen. "You have 30 days, Elijah. 30 days to pack your things and get out." "Get out?" I asked. "This is my home. Marcus and I bought this." "It was Marcus's home," she corrected. "And he left it to me. And because he left me with a mountain of gambling debts, I have to sell it. I have a buyer lined up, a cash buyer. They want possession in 30 days. You need to find a facility or a shelter. I do not care. Just be gone." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at her. "Gambling debts," I said. "Marcus never gambled. He was a penny pincher. He tracked every cent." "You did not know him like I did," she spat. "He had a secret life, Elijah. A dark life. And now I have to clean up the mess. I am selling the house to pay his creditors. It is the only way to save his reputation." She was lying. It was a sloppy, desperate lie. But inside my chest, my heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm, because she had made a fatal error, a mistake born of arrogance and ignorance. She thought she owned the house. She thought Marcus's will, even the fake one she had undoubtedly forged, gave her title to this property. She did not know about the joint tenancy. 10 years ago, when Clara died, I put Marcus on the deed. But I structured it specifically as a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. That meant that if one of us died, the property automatically, instantly, and legally reverted 100% to the survivor. It did not pass through a will. It did not go through probate. It could not be claimed by creditors. The moment Marcus died in that water, this house became solely mine again. Tiffany owned nothing. She had no right to sell it. She had no right to evict me. She was standing on my floor, breathing my air, threatening me with a power she did not possess. But I did not tell her. If I told her now, she would stop. She would retrench. She would find another way to hurt me. She would forge a deed. She would burn the house down. So I let her believe she had won. I let her believe she held the knife. I cannot leave, I stammered, letting my hands shake the paper. I have nowhere to go. My pension is small. That is not my problem, she said. She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. The greed was radiating off her like heat. I am going to stay at a hotel. I cannot stand the smell of this place. It smells like old people and failure. I will be back in 2 days with the real estate agent. Have your room cleaned up. Do not embarrass me. She turned on her heel and walked toward the front door. She walked with the confidence of a predator who has just brought down a wounded gazelle. But in her haste and her arrogance, she snagged her bag on the hallway table. The zipper was not fully closed. A few papers fluttered out and drifted to the floor. Damn it, she cursed. She bent down and scooped them up quickly. She shoved them back in. She looked at me to see if I had noticed. I was staring at my knees, trembling, playing the part. She huffed and walked out the door, slamming it behind her. The sound echoed through the empty house. I waited. I counted to 10. Then I counted to 20. I heard her car engine start. I heard the tires squeal as she pulled away from the curb. I stood up. I was not trembling anymore. I walked to the spot where she had dropped the papers. She had missed one. It had slid under the lip of the hallway rug, a small rectangular slip of heavy cardstock. I knelt down and pulled it out. It was a boarding pass. I walked into the kitchen and put it on the table under the bright light. I took out my reading glasses. It was a ticket for a flight on Air France, Chicago to Paris. One way. First class. Seat 1A. The date was for tomorrow night. I stared at the ticket. The story about the gambling debts crumbled. The story about selling the house to save Marcus's reputation dissolved. She was not selling the house to pay creditors. She was not liquidating the safe to cover funeral costs. She was cashing out. She was running. You do not buy a one-way ticket to Paris the day after your husband dies if you are a grieving widow. You do not flee the country if you are trying to settle an estate. You run when you have committed a crime and you need to be in a non-extradition jurisdiction before the bodies float to the surface. She was going to strip the house, empty the bank accounts, and vanish before the autopsy results, if there ever were any, could come back. She was going to leave me homeless and destitute while she lived off my son's life savings in France. I picked up the ticket. I held it carefully by the edges. This was evidence. This was intent. She thought she was evicting me. She thought she was discarding a useless old man. I pulled my burner phone from my pocket. I dialed Dante. "Did you find the bank records?" I asked. "I'm looking at them now," Dante said. His voice was wired. "Uncle E, it's bad. She didn't just drain the joint account. She has a wire transfer scheduled. Let me guess," I said, looking at the ticket. "An international transfer. Yeah, to a bank in the Cayman Islands. But the beneficiary isn't her. It's a shell company. And get this, the transfer is set to clear tomorrow at noon. She is leaving Dante. I found a ticket. One way to Paris. Tomorrow night." "She's running," Dante said. "That means she knows she can't hold up the lie for long." "Exactly. She is panicked. She is greedy. And she is careless. What do you want to do? Should we call the cops?" "No," I said. "The police will say it is a civil matter. She is the wife. She has the paperwork, even if it is forged. They will take weeks to investigate. She will be in Paris drinking wine by then. We need to stop her here. We need to freeze her." "I can try to flag the transfer," Dante said, "but I need authorization codes, or I need a court order." "We will get a court order," I said, "but not for the bank. I need you to find out everything you can about a man named Rico." "Who is Rico?" "I do not know yet, but his name is on the bottom of this eviction notice," she wrote. She used the back of a piece of scrap paper. "It looks like a phone message." "Rico called. Deal is set." "Rico," Dante repeated. "I'll run it." I hung up the phone. I looked at the eviction notice again. Then I looked at the plane ticket. She wanted me out in 30 days. She was leaving in 24 hours. I walked to the window and watched the empty street. "Run, Tiffany," I whispered. "Run as fast as you can. You are just building up speed for the wall you're about to hit." I folded the plane ticket and placed it in my pocket. Then I went to the basement to find my old lock-picking kit. I had to get into Marcus's office. I had to see what else she had missed. The invasion was over. The counterattack had just begun. The law office was located in a strip mall between a vape shop and a dry cleaner that smelled of heavy chemicals. It was not the kind of place my son, a renowned architect who designed glass towers that scraped the clouds, would ever visit. Marcus hired attorneys who worked in mahogany-paneled suites, downtown men who charged by the minute and wore cufflinks worth more than this entire building. This place, the law office of Lionel Blanton, had a flickering fluorescent light in the waiting room and a carpet that had been beige sometime in the 1990s. Tiffany parked her rental car right in front of the door. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, smoothing her hair and adjusting the collar of her black dress. She was playing the part of the grieving widow today, but her energy was frantic electric. She was a woman running a sprint, trying to break the tape before anyone realized she had started the race before the gun went off. "Come on, Elijah," she said, opening my door. "Do not drag your feet. We have a lot to get through." I climbed out slowly, leaning heavily on my cane. I made sure my hands shook as I reached for the door frame. It is a performance I have perfected over the last 48 hours. The frailer I look, the less they look at me. The more confused I seem, the more careless they become. We entered the office. A bell jingled above the door, a cheap, cheerful sound that felt obscene given the circumstances. A secretary with chewing gum in her mouth pointed us toward the back room without looking up from her magazine. Mr. Blanton was waiting for us. He was a small man with a comb-over that failed to hide his desperation and a suit that shone with the sheen of cheap polyester. He stood up when we entered, wiping his sweaty palms on his trousers. "Mrs. Booker," he said, nodding to Tiffany, "and this must be the father." Tiffany sat down and crossed her legs. "Get on with it, Lionel. I have a flight to catch." I sat in the chair opposite him. It was low and uncomfortable, designed to make the client feel small. I rested my hands on the handle of my cane and looked around the room. There were no diplomas from Ivy League schools on the wall. There were framed certificates from online courses. This was a man who notarized car titles and defended drunk drivers. He was not an estate planning attorney. He was a tool. Mr. Blanton cleared his throat and opened a folder on his desk. He pulled out a document. The paper was bright white, crisp. It had not been sitting in a safe deposit box for years. It had come out of a laser printer this morning. "This is the last will and testament of Marcus Booker Blanton," announced. His voice wavered slightly. He looked at Tiffany, then at me, then back at the paper. "Dated 1 week ago." I narrowed my eyes behind my thick spectacles. 1 week ago. Marcus was in Chicago 1 week ago. He was busy finishing a proposal for the City Planning Commission. He never mentioned meeting with a lawyer in a strip mall. Blanton began to read. The legalese was standard boilerplate text you could download from the internet for $50. Being of sound mind and body, revoking all prior wills, it was boring, rhythmic, and deadly. I leave my entire estate, including real property, liquid assets, investments, and personal effects, to my beloved wife, Tiffany Booker. I watched Tiffany. She did not look at the lawyer. She was looking at the air conditioning vent, her foot tapping a rapid, nervous rhythm against the leg of the chair. She was counting the money in her head. Blanton continued. "Regarding my father, Elijah Booker." I lifted my head slowly. I made my lower lip tremble. "My son," I whispered. "What did he say about me?" Blanton swallowed hard. He adjusted his tie. "It explicitly states I leave nothing to my father, Elijah Booker. Furthermore, due to his advancing age and declining cognitive faculties, I appoint my wife, Tiffany Booker, as his legal guardian should the need arise, with full power of attorney over his person and remaining assets." The silence in the room was absolute. It was a silence you could suffocate in. Tiffany turned to me. Her face was a mask of fake sorrow. "I am so sorry, Elijah. He was worried about you. He knew you were slipping. He wanted to make sure someone strong was in charge of your care. I will find you a nice facility, something affordable. You will be safe there." I looked at her. I looked at the lawyer. They were waiting for me to cry. They were waiting for me to shout. They were waiting for the reaction of a helpless old man who has just been stripped of his dignity. I let out a long, shaky sigh. I slumped forward, resting my forehead on my hands on top of the cane. He really thought I was losing my mind. I mumbled into my hands. "It is for the best," Blanton said quickly. "He wanted to protect you." Can I see it?" I asked, my voice muffled. "I just want to see his signature. One last time." Tiffany rolled her eyes. "Just show him Lionel, so we can sign the affidavits and leave." Blanton pushed the document across the desk. It slid over the polished wood and came to a stop in front of me. I sat up. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my reading glasses. They were thick, cumbersome things with black frames. To the naked eye, they looked like something you would buy at a pharmacy for $10, but they were not. I had modified them years ago. The left lens was a standard magnifier, but the right lens was a jeweler's loupe, ground to my prescription, capable of 10 times magnification. I put them on my nose and leaned over the paper. I did not read the text. The text was irrelevant. I looked at the bottom of the page. There it was. Marcus Booker, written in blue ink. I focused on the ink. It was ballpoint, uneven pressure. It looked real. It was not a digital print. Someone had used a pen to write this name. But then I looked closer. I looked at the flow of the letters. The M was looped high, the B was sharp. It was definitely Marcus's handwriting, but something was missing. I held my breath. I remembered the day Marcus graduated from architecture school. He had spent hours practicing his professional signature. He told me that an architect's signature on a blueprint had to be distinctive. It had to be art. He developed a habit, a flourish. He always, without exception, drew a sharp horizontal line under the last 3 letters of his name, the Keir in Booker, and then slashed it backward. It was his trademark. He had signed every birthday card, every check, and every contract that way for the last 20 years. I looked at the signature on the will. It ended with a soft curve. No underline, no backward slash. This signature was Marcus's, yes, but it was the signature of a 22-year-old college student. It was the signature he used before he became an architect. I moved my head slightly, letting the light hit the paper at an angle. Through the high-powered lens, I saw it, the faint, almost invisible indentation around the ink. It was a tracing. Someone had taken an old document, perhaps a college loan application or an old lease, placed it under this fresh paper and used a light box or a window to trace the line. They had done a good job. But when you trace, you hesitate. You lose the fluidity of speed. Under magnification, the lines of the signature were not smooth curves. They were jagged. They were a series of microscopic stops and starts where the forger's hand had paused to check the line underneath. And they had traced an old signature. They had copied a version of my son that no longer existed. Tiffany had kept his old papers. She had dug through his college boxes in the basement. She had found a signature she liked, and she had copied it, not knowing that he had changed it 2 decades ago. It was a clumsy, arrogant mistake, the kind of mistake a forensic accountant prays for. I felt a cold rage burning in my stomach, hotter than any fire. She had forged my son's name to steal his legacy. She had turned his hand against his father. I sat back. I took off the glasses and folded them slowly. Is it really him? I asked, looking at Tiffany. My eyes were watery. I let a tear spill over. Of course it is him, Tiffany snapped. Who else would it be? He signed it right before we left for the trip. Now sign the acknowledgement, Elijah. I have a plane to catch. Blanton pushed a second document toward me. Acknowledgement of reading and waiver of contest. If I signed this, I was legally agreeing that the will was valid. I was waiving my right to fight it in probate court. I picked up the pen Blanton offered. It was a cheap plastic stick. My hand trembled violently. I let the pen hover over the paper. I suppose I have no choice, I stammered. You really don't, Tiffany said. I scribbled a shaky, illegible mess on the line. It looked like the scratching of a man with Parkinson's. It did not look like the signature of Elijah Booker. There, I said. I dropped the pen. Good, Tiffany said. She stood up immediately. She reached for the will. Wait, I said. I knocked my cane against the desk, creating a loud clatter. I dropped my other hand to my lap. Oh, clumsy me. As Blanton and Tiffany looked down at the cane, I moved my right hand. I was holding my phone. It looked like a brick from 2005. A gray, chunky piece of plastic with rubber buttons. But inside the casing, it was an iPhone 15 Pro lens. I held it under the edge of the desk, angled upward. I pressed the side button. The shutter was silent. I snapped 3 high-resolution photos of the will lying on the desk. I captured the text. I captured the date. And most importantly, I captured the forged, outdated signature with its microscopic tremors. I bent down and retrieved my cane. I slipped the phone back into my pocket in the same motion. I stood up, leaning heavily on the wood. I am tired, Tiffany, I said. I want to go home. She snatched the will from the desk and stuffed it into her bag. Go home then, Elijah. Pack your boxes. You have 30 days. But honestly, if you are out by the time I get back from Paris, it would be better for everyone. I walked toward the door. I did not look back at the lawyer. I could smell his fear. He knew this was wrong. He knew it was rushed, but he had taken the money. I stepped out into the parking lot. The sun was blinding. I took a deep breath of the exhaust-filled air. I had the photo. I had the proof. The signature was the key. It proved fraud. It proved premeditation. And because she had used it to claim the house, it proved intent to commit grand larceny. I walked to the car, shuffling my feet, but inside my mind was racing. You traced the wrong name, Tiffany, I thought. You stole the ghost of my son, and now the ghost is going to haunt you. I got into the passenger seat. Where to? She asked, not looking at me. Home, I said. I have a lot of work to do. She laughed, a cruel, sharp sound. Packing takes time, old man. Better get started. I said nothing. I touched the phone in my pocket. I was not packing. I was preparing the evidence file. And tonight, while she flew to Paris, I was going to send this photo to a handwriting expert I knew in Quantico. By the time she landed, I would have a sworn affidavit stating that the signature was a forgery. The invasion was over. The forgery was documented. Now it was time to follow the money. The movers came for the piano just after lunch. It was a Steinway Model B, a grand instrument with a finish like black glass. My wife Clara had played it every Sunday evening for 30 years. The music was the heartbeat of this house. Now 2 men with thick necks and indifferent eyes were strapping it to a dolly. Tiffany stood in the foyer watching them. She was tapping her foot. She was holding a stack of cash. She had sold a $40,000 instrument to a pawnbroker for $3,000 cash. Careful with the walls, she snapped at the men. I need this place pristine for the showing. I stood in the doorway of the living room. My hands gripped the handle of my cane until my knuckles turned white. Every bump of the piano against the dolly was a physical blow to my chest. It felt like they were carrying Clara out of the house all over again. Please, I whispered. My voice was raspy. That was her favorite. Can we not keep it? Just for a while. Tiffany turned to me. She stuffed the cash into her pocket. It is just wood and wire, Elijah. It takes up too much space. And frankly, it is depressing. No buyer wants to see a shrine to a dead woman in the living room. It kills the vibe. She waved at the movers. Take it away. I watched them roll it down the ramp and into the back of a dirty truck. The heavy metal door slammed shut. The engine roared. And just like that, the music was gone. I lowered my head. I let my shoulders shake. I let a single genuine tear slide down my cheek. It was painful. It was agonizing. But it was also necessary. Tiffany watched me cry. She smiled. It was a small, satisfied twitch of her lips. She thought she had broken me. She thought that by stripping the house of its soul, she was stripping me of my will to fight. I am going to the hotel to pack, she said. I have a flight tonight. I will send a cleaning crew tomorrow. Try not to make a mess. She walked out. She got into her rental car and drove away. I stood there for a full minute after she left. The silence in the living room was deafening. The empty space where the piano had stood looked like a scar on the hardwood floor. Then I stopped shaking. I wiped the tear from my cheek with a handkerchief. I straightened my back. You made a mistake, Tiffany, I said to the empty room. You took the piano. You took the noise. Now there is nothing left to distract me. I walked to the hallway closet. I pushed aside the winter coats and opened the hidden panel in the back wall. It revealed the staircase to the basement. Not the finished basement where Marcus used to play video games. The sub-basement, the room I built when I retired. It was a small room. Soundproof, climate-controlled. It contained a single desk, a high-end server rack, and 3 monitors. It was my command center. I sat down in the ergonomic chair. I did not need my cane here. I woke the computers. The screens glowed with a soft blue light. I pulled out the burner phone and dialed Dante. Did you get the handshake? I asked. I'm in. Dante's voice crackled. I mirrored his phone when you were at the lawyer's office. When she connected to the office Wi-Fi, I piggybacked on the signal. I have her login credentials for the joint accounts. Good, I said. Give me remote access. A second later, a terminal window opened on my center monitor. Rows of code scrolled by green on black. Then the banking interface appeared. I put on my reading glasses. I was not looking at this as a father. I was looking at this as a forensic accountant. I spent 40 years hunting embezzlers who were smarter than Tiffany. I hunted men who hid millions in shell companies in Panama. Tiffany was a novice. She was greedy, and greed makes people sloppy. I opened Marcus's primary checking account. She had lied. Of course she had lied. There were no gambling debts. There were no payments to casinos. There were no withdrawals at racetracks. Marcus was meticulous. His ledger was boring. Mortgage payments, utility bills, investments in index funds. He was saving for a boat. He wanted to sail around the world when he retired. I scrolled back 6 months. The balance was healthy, or it had been. 3 days ago, the day after the accident, the account had been drained. A single wire transfer of $450,000. I traced the routing number. It went to a holding company in the Cayman Islands, Blue Horizon Ventures. I typed the name into a search bar on my second monitor. Dante had given me access to a database of offshore corporate registries. It was a shell, registered 2 weeks ago. The signatory was anonymous, but I did not need the name. I knew where the money went. I went back to the bank statements. I looked deeper. I looked for the anomalies, the small bleeds that precede the hemorrhage. I found them. Starting 3 months ago, there was a pattern. Withdrawals, cash transfers, peer-to-peer payments. They were not random. They were rhythmic. January 15th, $10,000. February 15th, $10,000. March 15th, $10,000. The recipient was listed only as consulting services. I clicked on the transaction details. The receiving bank was a small credit union in Honolulu, Hawaii. I narrowed my eyes. Marcus lived in Chicago. He had no business in Hawaii. He had not been there in 5 years until this final trip. Why was he sending $30,000 to a credit union in Honolulu? And why $10,000? In the world of financial crime, $10,000 is a magic number. It is the threshold for a currency transaction report. If you move more than $10,000, the bank has to report it to the IRS. If you move exactly $10,000, it flags the system. If you are smart, you move $9,900. Marcus knew this. He was a businessman. Whoever asked for this money wanted exactly 10 grand. It smelled like blackmail or a retainer. I dug deeper into the metadata of the transfer. Dante's software stripped away the privacy layers. The account holder's name appeared. Enrico Salvatore, Rico, the name on the scrap of paper Tiffany had used for the eviction notice. I leaned back in my chair. The pieces were snapping together with the cold click of a loaded weapon. Marcus was sending money to a man named Rico in Hawaii for 3 months. Then Tiffany convinces Marcus to go on a vacation to Hawaii. Then Marcus drowns. Then Tiffany tries to flee to Paris. This was not a crime of passion. This was a long con. Dante, I said into the phone. I have a name. Enrico Salvatore, Honolulu. I need everything. Police record, credit history, known associates. I'm already running it, Dante said. He sounded excited. The thrill of the hunt. Uncle E, this guy is a piece of work. He's a diving instructor. But he lost his certification 3 years ago. Negligence. A tourist died on his watch. Oxygen tank failure. Did he go to jail? No. Settled out of court. Insurance paid out. Insurance fraud, I whispered. He kills them, and he makes it look like an accident. And get this. Dante continued. I pulled his phone records. He has been in contact with the Chicago number every day for the last 4 months. Let me guess, I said. Tiffany. Bingo. They talk for hours, usually late at night, when Marcus was asleep. They were planning it, I said. My voice was cold. It was the voice of a judge passing sentence. They were rehearsing the murder of my son. I looked at the screen. I looked at the transfers. $30,000. That was the down payment. The $450,000 she stole yesterday, that was the payoff. But there was something else. Something that did not fit. If they planned this for months, why was the will so sloppy? Why was the signature forged with an old flourish? Because Marcus refused to sign. They got him to Hawaii. They got him isolated. Rico was there. But Marcus, my stubborn, brilliant son, refused to play along. He did not sign the papers. He did not give them the legal cover they needed. So they had to kill him the hard way. And they had to forge the documents in a panic. Uncle E. Dante said. His voice changed. It dropped an octave. I found something else. I hacked into the hotel's localized server, the security footage. They wipe it every 48 hours. Did you get it? I recovered a fragments. A corrupted file from the pool deck camera. Timestamp is 2 hours before the reported time of death. Send it. A file appeared on my third monitor. I clicked play. The video was grainy. The tropical sun washed out the colors, but I could see them. There was the hotel pool, empty. It was midday. Everyone was at the beach. Marcus was there. He was wearing his swim trunks. He was standing by the edge of the water. He looked agitated. He was pacing. A man walked into the frame. He was tan, muscular. He had long hair tied back. He moved with the arrogance of a man who owned the island. Rico. Marcus stopped pacing. He pointed a finger at Rico's chest. He was shouting. There was no audio, but the body language was violent. Marcus shoved Rico. Rico did not shove back. He laughed. He spread his arms wide. He said something. Then Tiffany walked into the frame. She was wearing a bikini and a sarong. She walked between them. She put a hand on Marcus's chest. She stroked his arm. She was calming him down. Or she was holding him back. She handed Marcus a bottle of water. I watched closely. I zoomed in. Marcus took the bottle. He was angry. He was distracted. He unscrewed the cap and took a long drink. Tiffany watched him drink. Rico watched him drink. They exchanged a look. It was a split-second glance, a micro-expression, a predator's nod. Marcus finished the water. He threw the bottle into a recycling bin. He stormed off towards the beach path. Tiffany and Rico stayed behind. They watched him go. Rico smiled. He made a gesture with his hand, a slicing motion across his throat. The video cut to static. I sat in the silence of my basement. The hum of the computer fans sounded like a swarm of bees. They drugged him. That was why he drowned. That was why a state champion swimmer could not keep his head above water. They put something in that water bottle, a sedative, a muscle relaxant. He went to the ocean to cool off, to swim away his anger. And when the drug kicked in, when his muscles failed him in the deep water, he sank, and they watched. I felt a heat rise in my chest. It was not grief, it was nuclear. They murdered him. They did not just push him, they poisoned him and let the ocean do the work. I saved the video file, I encrypted it, I backed it up to 3 different servers. This was the smoking gun, but it was not enough. It proved conspiracy, it proved intent. But without a body, a defense lawyer could argue it was circumstantial. They could argue Marcus had a heart attack. They could argue the throat-slit gesture was a joke. I needed the body, or I needed the confession. Dante, I said, keep tracking the money. I need to know where Rico is right now. He's in Hawaii, Dante said. His credit card just pinged at a liquor store in Kona. He bought champagne. He is celebrating, I said. Not for long. I stood up. My knees popped. I looked at the empty screen where my son's face had been. I am coming for you, Marcus, I whispered. I turned off the monitors. The room plunged into darkness. I walked up the stairs. I had a flight to catch. Not to Paris. To Hawaii. I was going to find Rico. And I was going to make him wish he had stayed in prison. The trail was hot. The money was moving, and the old accountant was closing the books. I sat in the dim light of the sub-basement, the glow of the monitors reflecting in my glasses. The face of the man from the pool deck was frozen on the center screen. Enrico Salvatore. Rico. He was handsome in a rough-weathered way with the kind of smile that promised adventure and delivered ruin. Dante had pulled his file from a private database used by insurance investigators. It was a digital rap sheet of moral failures, small-time grifts, staged accidents, a dive shop in Key West that burned down under suspicious circumstances just days before a bankruptcy hearing. He was a parasite, but parasites usually do not kill the host unless they are desperate. I needed to know why he had graduated to murder. I typed a command into the terminal, run cross-reference. Subject A. Tiffany Booker. Subject B. Enrico Salvatore. The processor hummed. I watched the progress bar. I took a sip of water. My throat was dry, not from thirst, but from the dust of the old house and the ash of my own anger. The screen flashed. Match found. I leaned forward. The system had pulled a yearbook photo from the University of Miami dated 12 years ago. It was a group shot of the sailing club. In the back row, with his arm draped possessively over the shoulders of a blonde girl, was a younger, smoother Rico. And the girl looking up at him with adoration and hunger was Tiffany. They knew each other. I clicked deeper. They were not just classmates. They were co-defendants. A sealed, juvenile record from their freshman year, credit card fraud. They had skimmed numbers from a restaurant where they both worked. The charges were dropped due to a procedural error, but the bond was there. They were partners in crime long before my son ever met her. I sat back the leather chair, groaning. It was the oldest story in the book, the bad boy and the ambitious girl. They had likely stayed in touch or perhaps reconnected when Tiffany grew bored of the stable, honest life Marcus provided. Marcus was an architect. He built things. Rico destroyed them. For a woman like Tiffany, who measured love in adrenaline and dollars, Marcus never stood a chance. They had played the long game. She married the mark. She waited. And when the payout wasn't coming fast enough, she called her old partner. I looked at the time. It was almost noon. Tiffany was supposed to be at her hotel packing for her flight to Paris. The house was supposed to be empty. I needed to upload the facial recognition data to the cloud. I needed Dante to secure it before I left for Hawaii. I grabbed the laptop from the desk, not one of my secure servers, but Marcus's old MacBook that I had brought down to use as a bridge. It was light or portable. I walked up the stairs, my joints popping. I emerged from the closet in the hallway and walked into the living room. The Wi-Fi signal was stronger here. I sat on the sofa, the one Tiffany hadn't sold yet because it had a coffee stain on the cushion. I opened the laptop. The screen came to life. I saw the progress bar for the upload, 80%, 90%. Suddenly the front door exploded open. It didn't just open. It slammed against the wall with a violence that shook the picture frames. Tiffany stormed in. She was not the cool, collected executioner she had been yesterday. She was fraying. Her hair was messy strands escaping her bun. Her face was flushed. She was dragging a large suitcase and she looked like a cornered animal. She stopped dead when she saw me. Her eyes dropped to the laptop in my lap. "What are you doing?" she screamed. It was a shriek of pure, unadulterated panic. She dropped the suitcase handle. It clattered against the floor. I froze. I let my hands hover over the keyboard. I widened my eyes behind my thick glasses. I was just checking the email, Tiffany," I stammered. I wanted to see if anyone had sent condolences about Marcus. She marched across the room. She moved with a jerky, erratic energy. "You liar. You senile old liar. You are snooping. You are trying to get into his bank accounts, aren't you?" She reached me in 2 strides. She didn't ask for the computer. She snatched it. She grabbed the top of the screen and ripped it from my hands with such force that it tore a fingernail on my thumb. "No, please," I begged, shrinking back into the sofa cushions. "It is just photos. I just wanted to see his face." "I do not care what you wanted," she yelled. "This is my property. Everything in this house is my property. You have no right to touch it. You have no right to breathe on it." She looked at the screen. The upload window was minimized, hidden behind a generic browser page I had opened just in case. But she didn't check. She didn't look at the files. She was too far gone for rationality. She saw the machine as an enemy. She saw me as a threat. She raised the laptop high above her head. "Tiffany, no," I cried out. She brought it down. She smashed the edge of the laptop against the corner of the heavy oak coffee table. There was a sickening crunch of metal and glass. Sparks flew. The screen shattered into a spiderweb of black and green lines. She didn't stop. She hit it again and again. She pounded the machine until the keyboard popped out and the casing bent. She was beating it to death. She was taking out every ounce of her fear, her guilt, and her terror on the aluminum frame. "This is mine." She punctuated every word with a blow. Finally, she threw this twisted wreckage onto the rug. She stood over it, breathing hard, her chest heaving. Her hands were shaking. "Look what you made me do," she hissed. She pointed a trembling finger at me. "You are destroying this family, Elijah. You are destroying my assets. You are confused. You are dangerous." I looked at the broken computer. I looked at her. "I am sorry," I whispered. I lowered my head, staring at my hands. "I am so sorry, Tiffany. I didn't mean to upset you. I just miss him. I am so confused lately. I forget things. I forget what is mine." She stared at me. The violence began to drain out of her, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. She smoothed her dress. She took a deep breath. "Yes," she said. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You do forget things. You are violent, Elijah. You attack people. You break things. I saw you." She was writing the script. She was creating the narrative right there in the living room. "I am afraid for my safety," she said, testing the words. "I cannot leave you alone in this house. You might burn it down. You might hurt yourself." She pulled her phone from her pocket. She typed a quick message. "I am calling Dr. Evans," she said. "He is a specialist, a geriatric psychiatrist. He owes me a favor. He is going to come over here and evaluate you. Today." Before I leave. Evaluated. I asked, making my voice tremble. Like a test. Like a safety check, she said. Because clearly you can no longer function independently. Look at this mess. She gestured to the laptop she had just destroyed. I cannot have you destroying the value of the estate. The house needs to be sold. And you need to be somewhere secure, where you can't break anything. She turned and walked to the kitchen, putting the phone to her ear. I heard her voice change instantly. It became sweet, worried, the voice of a concerned daughter-in-law. Dr. Evans? Yes, it is Tiffany. It is an emergency. My father-in-law, he is having an episode. He became violent. He destroyed a computer. I am terrified to leave him alone. Can you come? Please. Now. Thank you. She hung up. She looked back at me from the kitchen doorway. Do not move, Elijah. Do not touch anything else. I nodded obediently. I stayed on the sofa, hunched over, looking at the ruin of the laptop. I waited until she turned her back to pour herself a glass of wine. Her hand was shaking so badly the bottle rattled against the glass. I looked at the destroyed machine. The screen was dead. The hard drive was likely crushed. But it didn't matter. I touched the small Bluetooth earpiece in my left ear, hidden by my gray hair. Dante, I whispered. Did you get it? Clear as a bell, Uncle E. Dante's voice replied. The upload finished 5 seconds before she smashed it. I have the facial recognition match. I have the link to Rico. And I have the audio recording of her smashing the computer and blaming you. It is all in the cloud. Good, I whispered. She is scared, Dante said. She sounds like she's about to snap. She is, I said. She knows the walls are closing in even if she cannot see them yet. Violence is the last refuge of the incompetent. I sat back. I let my hands rest on my knees. She was bringing a doctor. A crooked doctor, no doubt, someone she could bribe to sign a commitment order. She wanted to lock me away in a memory care unit where no one would believe my stories about murder and fraud. She wanted to sedate me into silence. Let him come, I thought. I had played poker with mobsters in the 70s. I had interrogated embezzlers who had stolen millions. I knew how to bluff. If she wanted a senile old man, I would give her a performance worthy of an Oscar. I would give her exactly what she needed to feel safe enough to leave the country. Because once she was on that plane, once she thought I was locked away and the money was safe, she would lead me straight to Marcus. I looked at the shattered laptop one last time. It was a small price to pay for the evidence I now possessed. Rico and Tiffany, partners in crime, lovers, murderers. The pieces were all there. Now I just had to survive the next few hours. I had to survive the doctor. I closed my eyes and began to practice my mumble. I let a little drool gather at the corner of my mouth. The trap was set, and she was walking right into it. The doorbell rang at 2 in the afternoon. It was not a polite ring. It was a summons. Tiffany jumped up from the armchair where she had been watching me like a hawk. She smoothed her dress, checked her hair in the hallway mirror, and opened the door. Dr. Evans, she said. Her voice dripped with relief. Thank you for coming so quickly. It has been a nightmare. A man walked in. He did not look like a healer. He looked like a man who bet on greyhounds and lost. He wore a suit that was too large for his frame and carried a battered leather briefcase. He smelled of peppermint and stale tobacco. He scanned the room, his eyes lingering on the shattered remains of the laptop on the floor, then moving to me. He did not see a patient. He saw a transaction. This is the father, Tiffany said, pointing at me. Elijah. He is 75. He has been aggressive all morning. He is hallucinating. He thinks people are stealing from him. Dr. Evans nodded. He walked over and stood in front of me. He did not offer his hand. He pulled a penlight from his pocket and shined it in my eyes without asking. I blinked rapidly, pulling my head back in feigned terror. Pupils are reactive, Evans muttered. He put the light away. Mr. Booker, do you know what year it is? I looked at him. I looked at Tiffany. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I let a tremor run through my right hand. It is the year of the water, I whispered. Evans raised an eyebrow. He looked at Tiffany. He does this, Tiffany said quickly. He talks in riddles. He forgets where he is. Mr. Booker Evans continued, his voice loud and slow as if I were deaf. Do you know who this woman is? I squinted at Tiffany. I let a look of confusion wash over my face. She is the lady from the airline, I said. She is going to Paris. She has the ticket in her pocket. Tiffany turned pale for a second, but she recovered fast. See, he is fixated on travel. He thinks everyone is leaving him. It is abandonment psychosis. Evans pulled a clipboard from his briefcase. He started checking boxes. He did not ask me about my medical history. He did not take my blood pressure. He was filling out a Form 402. In Illinois, that is the preliminary certificate for involuntary commitment. "Mr. Booker, why did you break the computer?" Evans asked, gesturing to the debris on the rug. "I did not break it," I said, my voice rising in a childish whine. "The fish broke it." "The fish?" Evans asked, bored. "The flying fish," I said. I leaned forward, gripping my knees. "I saw them. In the water. They have wings. They took Marcus. They took my boy down to the coral. He is sleeping with the flying fish now." It was a performance, but it was rooted in the truth of the video I had watched. I was mocking them with the reality they were trying to hide, but to them it sounded like the ravings of a broken mind. Tiffany let out a dramatic sigh. "You see, he thinks fish are flying. He is completely detached from reality. Doctor, I cannot leave him here alone. I have to go handle the funeral arrangements abroad. I need him somewhere safe, immediately." Evans stopped writing. He looked at Tiffany. "Safe costs money, Mrs. Booker. Immediate placement requires administrative fees." I watched the exchange. It was subtle, but I saw it. The slight nod. The rub of the fingers. "My husband left a substantial estate," Tiffany said. "The executor will handle all medical bills. I can write you a personal check right now to cover the retainer." Evans smiled. It was a greasy, thin smile. "Very well. In my professional opinion, Mr. Booker presents a danger to himself and others. Acute dementia with paranoid delusions. I will sign the emergency detention order. You can call the transport service. They can be here in an hour." An hour! I had an hour before men in white coats came to drag me away. I slumped back into the sofa. I closed my eyes. I started to hum a tune, a nonsensical, repetitive melody. It was the final touch. "Excellent," Tiffany said. "Let me walk you out, doctor. I have the checkbook in my car." They turned their backs on me. They walked toward the front door. Tiffany was talking fast, low, cementing the deal. Evans was nodding already, calculating his cut. The moment the front door clicked shut behind them, I stopped humming. I opened my eyes. The fog of dementia vanished. I checked my watch. I had maybe 3 minutes. Tiffany would write the check at her car. She would shake his hand. She would gloat. I stood up. I moved with the speed of the man I used to be. I did not need the cane. I ran silently to the kitchen and out the side door that led to the garage. The garage was dark. Tiffany's rental car, a silver SUV, was parked inside. She had parked it there earlier to load the boxes she had stolen from the safe. I dropped to my knees. The concrete was cold. I slid under the rear bumper of the SUV. It was a tight fit. My joints screamed in protest, but I ignored the pain. Pain is just information. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the device. It was a GPS tracker, the size of a quarter, high-powered magnet, battery life of 3 weeks. Dante had mailed it to me a year ago as a joke, a gadget for tracking my luggage. I had activated it this morning while Tiffany was yelling at me. I felt around the undercarriage. I found a flat spot on the frame tucked up behind the spare tire well. It was protected from road debris and hidden from a casual inspection. I pressed the device against the metal. It clicked. A solid metallic sound. Attached. I slid out from under the car. I brushed the dust off my knees. I checked the ground for anything I might have dropped. Nothing. I ran back into the house. I locked the side door. I was back on the sofa humming my tune exactly 10 seconds before the front door opened again. Tiffany walked in alone. She was beaming. She held a pink carbon copy sheet in her hand. "It is done, Elijah," she said. She waved the paper at me. "The doctor agrees. You are sick. Very sick. The ambulance is coming to take you to a nice place. A place with soft walls." I looked at her with wide, watery eyes. "Will Marcus be there?" I asked. She laughed. It was a cruel sound. "No. Marcus is dead, and you are going to be forgotten. I have a flight to catch. The movers will come for the rest of the furniture tomorrow. Goodbye, Elijah." She went upstairs to get her final bag. I heard her walking around, making sure she hadn't missed anything of value. I sat there and looked at the pink paper she had left on the table. The commitment order. She thought this piece of paper was my prison. She thought she had won. She did not know that the ambulance was not coming. I had texted Dante while I was under the car. Just one word. Intercept. Dante was already in the dispatch system of the private ambulance company Evans used. He had canceled the pickup. He had marked the order as duplicate error. No one was coming. Tiffany would leave for the airport, thinking I was about to be collected. She would get on her plane to Paris, believing she had tied up every loose end. She would leave me alone in this house, with my computers, with her flight itinerary, and now with a tracker on her car. Except she wasn't taking the car to Paris. She was taking a rental. Wait. My mind raced. The tracker was on the rental car. She would drive it to O'Hare Airport and return it. The tracker would be useless in a Hertz lot, unless she wasn't going to the airport. I replayed the conversation. I have a flight to catch. I am going to Paris. But the bank transfer, the $10,000 payments to Rico, the shell company in the Caymans. Why would she go to Paris if the money was in the Caymans? Why would she flee to Europe if her partner in crime was in Hawaii? She was lying about Paris. The ticket I found was a decoy. She dropped it on purpose. Or maybe she bought it just to throw off anyone looking at her credit card statement. If she was meeting Rico, she was going to Hawaii, or the Caymans, or somewhere else. And she wouldn't fly commercial if she was carrying cash or stolen bonds she didn't want to declare. I heard her coming down the stairs. She had her suitcase. She had the bag with the contents of the safe. I am leaving the key under the mat for the ambulance driver, she said. Do not try to run. You will get lost. She walked out the door. She got into the SUV. I pulled out my phone. I opened the tracking app. A red dot appeared on the map. The SUV backed out of the driveway. It turned onto the main road. It did not head toward O'Hare International. It headed south, toward a private airfield in Gary, Indiana. I smiled. She was flying private. She was chartering a jet. That was how she planned to move the stolen assets without going through TSA. That was how she planned to disappear. And the rental car. She was driving it right up to the tarmac. I watched the red dot move. You think I am crazy, Tiffany? I whispered to the screen. You think I am a senile old man waiting for men in white coats. I am not waiting. I stood up. I went to the closet and grabbed my go bag. I had my own flight to catch. I was not going to follow her to Gary. I knew where she was going. The money was in the Caymans. But the loose end was in Hawaii. Rico. She wasn't meeting him. She was running from him. Or to him. It didn't matter. The money trail and the blood trail intersected in Honolulu. I dialed Dante. She is not going to Paris, I said. She is heading to Gary Regional Airport. Get me the tail number of whatever plane she boards. Already on it, Dante said. And Uncle E? The ambulance dispatch just called her phone to confirm the cancellation. I routed the call to voicemail. She thinks you're being picked up right now. Perfect, I said. I walked out of my house. I left the front door unlocked. I left the shattered laptop on the floor. I left the pink commitment paper on the table. I got into my own car, a dusty Buick sedan parked in the neighbor's garage for safekeeping. I looked at the house one last time. It was a crime scene now, a monument to betrayal, but I would be back. And when I returned, I would not be alone. I put the car in gear. The leash is on, Tiffany, I said. Pull as hard as you want. You are just choking yourself. I drove toward O'Hare. I had a ticket to Honolulu, first class, paid for with points I had been saving for a vacation with my son. This was not a vacation. This was a retrieval mission, and I was bringing hell with me. The package arrived at my hotel suite in Honolulu 3 days after I landed. It had been forwarded from my Chicago address by a neighbor I trusted. It was a small, heavy cardboard box wrapped in brown paper and tape. The return address was a funeral home in Hilo, Hawaii. Pacific Rest Crematorium. I sat on the balcony of my room overlooking the turquoise water of Waikiki. The sun was bright, the tourists were laughing on the beach, but I felt only a cold, heavy stone in my stomach. This was supposed to be my son. I cut the tape with a pocket knife. I opened the box. Inside, nestled in cheap packing peanuts, was a small urn. It was made of polished brass, but it felt light. Too light. I lifted it out. It weighed maybe 3 pounds. I frowned. Marcus was a big man. 6'2", broad shoulders, 210 pounds of muscle and bone. Even after cremation, the remains of an adult male of his size should weigh at least 6 to 8 pounds. Bone is dense, ash is heavy. This felt like a bag of flour. I unscrewed the lid. It made a gritty, grinding sound. I looked inside. The ash was gray and white, a fine powder mixed with larger, coarser fragments. I poured a small amount onto a sheet of white hotel stationery. I put on my jeweler's glasses. I examined the fragments. Human bone ash is unique. It has a specific texture. It is not uniform. It contains small, identifiable shards of calcium phosphate. It does not look like wood ash. I picked up a larger fragment with a pair of tweezers. It was white porous. I held it up to the light. It had a honeycomb structure. I knew that structure. I had seen it before years ago when I audited a pet food company that was cutting corners. It was avian bone, bird bone, chicken or turkey, and mixed in with the gray powder were tiny black flecks, charcoal, wood ash. I sat back. I looked at the urn. This was not Marcus. This was a barbecue. Tiffany had not cremated him. She had bought a cheap urn, filled it with debris from a fireplace and maybe some animal bones, and mailed it to me to close the loop, to give me a body to bury so I would stop asking questions. But why? If Marcus drowned and she had the body, why not cremate him for real? Why send fake ash? There were only two possibilities. One, she buried him somewhere else to hide evidence of foul play marks on the neck water in the lungs that wasn't salt water or toxicology results that would show the sedative. Two, there was no body to cremate, because Marcus was not dead. My heart hammered against my ribs. If he was not dead, where was he? I needed certainty. I needed science. I poured the sample back into a Ziploc bag I had brought for this purpose. I put the urn back in the box. I grabbed my phone and called an old friend, Dr. Eris Thorne. He was a retired medical examiner who now ran a private pathology lab in Honolulu. We had worked together on a fraud case involving a life insurance scheme in the 90s. He owed me a favor. Eris, I said when he answered, I have a sample. I need a rush analysis, calcium content, DNA if you can find it, and species identification. Elijah, it has been years. What kind of sample? Cremains, I said. Supposedly my son. There was a silence on the line. Then Eris said, bring it in. The back door is open. I took a cab to his lab in the industrial district near the harbor. Eris met me at the door. He was a small man with wild white hair and hands stained with chemicals. He took the bag without a word. He put a sample under a mass spectrometer. He ran a chemical reagent test. He looked at the fragments under a high-powered microscope. I waited in his office staring at a jar containing a preserved jellyfish. The minutes ticked by like hours. 45 minutes later, Eris came out. He was wiping his hands on a rag. He looked grim. Elijah, he said, I am sorry. Is it him? I asked. No, Eris said. It is primarily cellulose. Wood ash, oak, and pine. The bone fragments are non-human. Avian and porcine. Pig bone, likely from a commercial butcher. And there is sand, silica, beach sand. So it is fake, I said. My voice was flat. It is completely synthetic, Eris confirmed. There is no human DNA, no human calcium signature. Whoever sent this to you literally swept out a fire pit and threw in some dinner scraps. I nodded. I felt a strange sense of relief washing over me. If this was real ash, my son was gone. But this was a lie. And a lie meant there was something to hide. A lie meant there was a chance. Thank you, Eris, I said. I need a formal report, notarized. You will have it in an hour, he said. What are you going to do? I am going to find the rest of the lie, I said. I left the lab and walked out into the humid Hawaiian afternoon. The air smelled of salt and diesel. Tiffany had made a mistake. A lazy, arrogant mistake. She thought I would just put the urn on a mantle and cry. She didn't think I would look inside. She didn't cremate him because she couldn't. Either she didn't have the body, or the body told a story she couldn't allow anyone to read. I took out my phone. I pulled up the tracking app. Tiffany was here, on the island. The dot was stationary at a luxury resort on the North Shore. And Rico was here. And somewhere in the space between the lie and the truth was my son. I hailed a cab. Take me to the North Shore, I told the driver. I was done with accountants and lawyers. I was done with labs. It was time to go hunting. The heat in Honolulu hit me the moment I stepped out of the airport terminal. It was not the dry, baking heat of a Chicago summer. It was a heavy, wet blanket that smelled of jet fuel and plumeria. Tourists were laughing, loading surfboards into rental vans, putting on lees and taking selfies. They saw paradise. I saw a crime scene. I did not go to a hotel. I had my luggage in the trunk of a rented sedan, a nondescript gray Ford that smelled of stale coconut air freshener. I drove straight to the marina. Lieutenant Kai Kahananui was waiting for me at the end of Pier 4. He was a mountain of a man with skin like weathered teak and hair that had turned completely white since the last time I saw him. We had served together in Vietnam long before I became an accountant, and he became a legend in the Coast Guard. He was retired now mostly, but he still had the badge, and more importantly, he still had the respect of every man who worked the water. "Elijah," he said. He did not smile. He did not offer a handshake. He pulled me into a hug that felt like being squeezed by a bear. "I am sorry, brother. I am so sorry about Marcus." I stepped back. I leaned on my cane, not because I needed it, but because it was part of the uniform now. "Tell me about the report, Kai," I said. Kai sighed. He looked out at the water. The sun was setting, painting the harbor in blood orange. "It is garbage, Elijah. The local PD closed the file in 24 hours. Accidental drowning, no foul play suspected. The body was released to the next of kin immediately." How, I asked. How do they close a drowning case without a body? Kai spat into the water. They had witnesses, or at least people who claimed to be witnesses. A tourist couple said they saw a man matching Marcus's description go into the water at Dead Man's Drop at sunset. They said the current took him. They said he went under and never came up. "Dead Man's Drop," I repeated. "It is a cliff on the North Shore," Kai explained. "It is dangerous. Locals do not swim there. The current is a rip that pulls you straight out to the deep channel. If you go under there, the ocean does not give you back, not for weeks, sometimes never." Marcus was a swimmer, Kai. He swam the English Channel. He knew how to read a current. He would never enter the water at a place called Dead Man's Drop at sunset. It is a tactical error he would not make. "I know," Kai said. "I told the detective that. I told him Marcus was elite, but the detective did not care. He had a grieving widow crying in his office. She was hysterical. She said Marcus was depressed. She said he had been drinking. She wanted closure. She wanted to go home. And she had influence." "You mean she paid him?" I said. Kai shrugged. "I cannot prove that. But things moved too fast. The cremation permit was signed by a judge who usually takes 3 days to read a menu. The death certificate was issued before the sun came up. It smells Elijah. It smells like dead fish in the sun." "Take me there," I said. "Now. It will be dark soon." "I have a flashlight," I said. "And darkness hides many things, but it also reveals others if you know where to look." We drove to the North Shore in Kai's truck. The road wound through lush jungle and past food trucks selling shrimp. The scenery was breathtaking, a cruel backdrop for the ugliness I was uncovering. Dead Man's Drop was not a beach. It was a jagged scar of black volcanic rock jutting out into the churning Pacific. The waves crashed against the base of the cliff with a violence that shook the ground. The spray rose 50 feet in the air. Kai parked the truck on the gravel shoulder. There were no other cars, no tourists. This was not a place for selfies, this was a place for endings. We got out. The wind was howling. It whipped my coat around my legs. "This is it," Kai shouted over the roar of the surf. The witnesses said he jumped from that ledge. I walked to the edge. I looked down. The water was a boiling cauldron of white foam and black depth. It was terrifying. But I was not looking at the water. I was looking at the rock. I took out my high-powered flashlight. I turned it on. The beam cut through the twilight. I scanned the ledge. The volcanic rock was sharp, razor sharp. If someone jumped from here voluntarily, they would clear the edge. They would jump out. But if someone was pushed, if someone was dragged, I saw it. About 3 feet from the edge, a scuff mark. The black rock was chipped, revealing a slightly lighter gray underneath. It was a fresh chip, and next to it, caught in a small fissure in the stone, was something blue. I got down on my hands and knees. My joints popped, a dry sound lost in the roar of the ocean. "Elijah, be careful," Kai warned. "The rock is slippery." I ignored him. I crawled to the edge. I pulled out my tweezers from my pocket. I reached into the crack. I clamped the metal on the blue object. I pulled gently. It came free. It was a scrap of fabric. Nylon, spandex blend, navy blue with a thin white stripe. I held it up to the light. I knew this fabric. I had bought Marcus these swim trunks for his birthday last year. They were professional grade, Speedo endurance, chlorine resistant, tear resistant. I put on my jeweler's loop right there on the cliff edge. The wind tried to tear it from my face, but I held it steady. I examined the edges of the scrap. If Marcus had fallen and the fabric had snagged on the sharp lava rock, the tear would be ragged. The fibers would be pulled, stretched, and frayed. Rock tears are chaotic. They are messy. I looked at the edge of the scrap. It was straight. The fibers were not pulled. They were sheared. The ends were compressed and clean. This fabric was not torn by a rock. It was cut. It was cut by a blade, a knife, or a pair of shears. I sat back on my heels. The realization hit me harder than the wind. Marcus did not jump. He did not fall. He was not wearing these trunks when he went into the water. Someone cut them off him, or someone cut a piece off to stage a scene, or there was a struggle and someone slashed at him with a knife. "This is not a drowning Kai," I said. My voice was low, but Kai heard me. "What did you find?" I handed him the scrap. Then I handed him the loop. "Look at the edge." Kai looked. He grunted. "That is a knife cut, a serrated blade. You can see the pattern of the teeth in the fiber." "They staged it," I said. "Or they attacked him here. Why would someone cut his trunks?" "Maybe to get them off," Kai said darkly. "If they wanted to make it look like he drowned, maybe they wanted him found naked. Or maybe he was tied up. Maybe they cut the ropes and caught the fabric." Tied up. The image of my son bound and helpless flashed in my mind. The video from the hotel pool. The throat-slitting gesture. Rico. "They brought him here," I said. "They brought him here to kill him." But something went wrong. If they killed him here and threw him in, why is there no body? The current takes it, yes. But bodies float eventually. "Unless he didn't die here," Kai said. "Unless they took him somewhere else." I stood up. I put the fabric in an evidence bag. I looked around the desolate landscape. There was nothing but rock and scrub brush. No cameras. No houses. But there was a road. A single 2-lane highway. If they brought him here, they drove. I scanned the gravel pullout where we were parked. I looked for tire tracks. But the wind and the rain had scrubbed the surface clean. However, 50 yards down the road there was a sign. A warning sign about high surf. And on the back of the sign, plastered with stickers, was a small solar-powered box, a traffic counter, or a dot camera. "Kai," I said, pointing. "Is that active?" Kai squinted. "That is a speed camera. The state put them in last month to catch the tourists racing rental Mustangs. Does it record?" "It takes snapshots," Kai said. "Every car that passes over 45. "Tiffany drives fast," I said. "She is impatient." "We need those photos," I said. "I can get them," Kai said. "I still have friends in the highway patrol." We walked back to the truck. The sun was gone now. The darkness was absolute. As I opened the passenger door, I felt it. A prickle on the back of my neck, the ancient reptilian sensation of being watched. I paused. I did not turn around immediately. I used the reflection in the truck's side mirror. Behind us, parked in a grove of ironwood trees about 100 yards away, was a dark shape. A truck. An old lifted pickup with oversized tires and a roll bar. The lights were off, but the engine was running. I could see the faint puff of exhaust in the moonlight. Someone was inside. "Don't look," Elijah Kai said softly. He had seen it too. He had his hand near his waistband where I knew he carried a concealed snub-nose revolver. "Who is it?" I asked. "Local boys maybe," Kai said. "Or maybe friends of the man you are looking for." The truck's headlights flashed once, high beams, blindingly bright. Then they went dark again. It was a warning. "They know I am here," I said. Good, Kai said. He started the engine. "If they know you are here, they will make a move. And when they move, they make mistakes." We pulled out onto the highway. The dark truck did not follow. It stayed in the trees, a silent sentinel guarding the scene of the crime. I looked at the evidence bag in my lap, the small blue square of fabric. My son was alive when he came to this cliff. I knew it in my gut. He fought. He struggled. And they cut him. But they didn't finish him. Not here. "Rico," I whispered. "You got greedy. You didn't throw him in. You kept him." We drove back toward the city lights. The hunt was no longer a cold investigation. It was a race. And now the predators knew they were being trailed. I touched the burner phone in my pocket. I needed to call Dante. I needed him to find a way to track a dead man. Because if Marcus was alive, he was running out of time. And if he was dead, I was going to burn this entire island down to find his bones. The drive back to Honolulu was quiet. Kai dropped me off near the harbor where I had parked my rental. He offered to stay to stand guard, but I refused. This part of the audit required a solo practitioner. I needed to draw the infection to the surface, and nothing draws out a predator like the scent of solitary wounded prey. I walked to my car. The streetlights in this industrial part of town were sparse, casting pools of sickly yellow light on the cracked pavement. The air was thick with the smell of old fish and diesel fumes. I tapped my cane against the asphalt with every step. Click, 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 a metronome counting down to violence. I felt him before I saw him. The air pressure shifted behind me, a scuff of a boot on grit. I did not turn around. I stopped. I leaned heavily on my cane, feigning the exhaustion of a man whose joints were grinding to dust. "You are a long way from the nursing home, Grandpa." The voice was young, arrogant. It came from the shadows of a shipping container to my left. I turned slowly. It was the driver of the dark truck. He stepped into the light. He was big local muscle, wearing a tank top that showed off tribal tattoos snaking down his arms. He held a butterfly knife in his right hand, flipping it open and closed with a hypnotic metallic click-clack. I adjusted my glasses. I looked at him with the mild confusion of a tourist who has taken a wrong turn. "I am looking for my son," I said. My voice wavered perfectly. "Your son is fish food," the man said, "and you are trespassing. Rico says you need to go back to the mainland, tonight, or you join the boy." He lunged. It was a lazy thrust. He expected me to cower. He expected me to beg. He saw gray hair and a cane. He did not see the man who had crawled through the mud of the Mekong Delta 40 years before he was born. He did not see the man who knew 32 ways to stop a human heart using only leverage and gravity. He made a mistake. He entered my personal space with a weapon he did not respect. I dropped the cane. It hit the ground with a clatter. In the same second, I stepped inside his guard. I moved with a speed that had been dormant, not lost. My left hand shot up and clamped onto his wrist, trapping the knife hand. My right hand formed into a rigid knife edge, struck his throat. It wasn't a warning tap. It was a strike designed to collapse the trachea just enough to induce panic. He gagged. His eyes bulged. I didn't stop. I pivoted my hips, maintained my grip on his wrist, and drove my elbow backward into his solar plexus. The air left his lungs in a wet whoosh. He doubled over. Now I had the leverage. I twisted his wrist outward against the joint. There was a sickening snap. The radius bone gave way. The knife clattered to the pavement. He tried to scream, but he had no air. I kicked the back of his knee. He collapsed to the pavement. I was on him instantly. I pressed my knee into the center of his spine, pinning him to the dirty asphalt. I grabbed his broken arm and pulled it up high behind his back, pushing the limit of the shoulder socket. The whole engagement had taken 3 seconds. I leaned down. I put my lips close to his ear. I dropped the senile grandfather act. My voice was a low, guttural growl. "You have 3 seconds to tell me where Rico is," I whispered, "or I will tear your rotator cuff out of the socket and you will never lift a fork again." 1. He sputtered, coughing up bile. He tried to buck me off, but I increased the pressure on his broken arm. He whimpered. 2. "The sea caves," he choked out. "The sea caves on the windward side." Near the old sugar mill, I eased the pressure slightly, just enough to let him breathe, not enough to let him hope. "Why?" I asked. "Why the sea caves? Why not the ocean floor?" "Because he's alive," the man sobbed. "He's alive. Rico didn't kill him." The world stopped spinning. The sounds of the distant harbor faded. Alive. My son. Marcus. I grabbed the man's hair and pulled his head back, forcing him to look at the sky. "Explain," I commanded. "And do not lie to me. I can smell a lie like I can smell the blood on your breath." "She paid for a hit," the man cried. "The lady. Tiffany. She paid Rico $50,000 to drown him and dump him. But Rico got greedy." "Go on." Rico figured. "If the husband is dead, the lady pays once. But if the husband is missing, if he holds him, he can bleed her dry. He kept him. He drugged him and hid him in the lava tubes. He's waiting for the wire transfer to clear, then he's going to demand more for disposal fees." I felt a cold fury wash over me, colder than the ocean depths. Rico was playing both sides. He was keeping my son as an insurance policy, a human savings bond he could cash in later. Does she know? I asked. Does Tiffany know he is alive? No, man. I swear, she thinks he's dead. She thinks the job is done. She's terrified. She's waiting for the all-clear call. I let go of his hair. I stood up. The man stayed on the ground, cradling his broken arm, weeping. He was broken. He was done. I picked up my cane. I dusted off my jacket. If you move, I said to him, I will finish it. If you call Rico, I will find you. He curled into a fetal position. He wasn't going anywhere. I walked back to my car. My hands were steady. My mind was crystal clear. Marcus was alive. He was suffering. He was a prisoner in a lava tube on the windward side. But he was breathing. I pulled out the burner phone. I dialed Dante. It rang once. Uncle E. What's happening? Change of plans, I said. My voice was tight. I sounded like the Marine I used to be. Marcus is alive. What Dante shouted. How Rico double-crossed her. He is holding Marcus hostage to extort more money. He is keeping him in a sea cave. Oh my God, we have to call the cops. The FBI. No time, I said. If Rico sees police lights, he will kill Marcus to eliminate the witness. This has to be a surgical strike. But first, we have to cut off the oxygen. Oxygen? The money, Dante. The money is the oxygen. I looked at the dashboard clock. It was late. The international banking windows were opening in Asia and closing in New York. Tiffany thinks Marcus is dead. She thinks she just bought her freedom. She sent that $450,000 to the shell company yesterday. But Rico is expecting more. Dante, listen to me carefully. I need you to freeze Tiffany's accounts. All of them. The joint account, her personal account, the Cayman shell, everything. I can do that, Dante said. I can trigger a fraud alert. It will lock everything down for 24 hours. But why? If she can't pay, won't Rico get angry? Exactly, I said. Rico is expecting a payday. When the money doesn't show up, he is going to panic. He is going to contact her. And when he contacts her, he is going to be distracted. I started the car. The engine roared to life. Freeze the money, Dante. Starve the beast. I am going to the windward side. I am going to get my son back. I put the car in gear and peeled out of the lot, leaving the broken man in the alley. Tiffany had paid for a death. Rico had sold a lie. And now the auditor was coming to balance the books. The numbers were about to turn red. Blood red. The road to the windward side of the island was treacherous in the dark. The jungle pressed in on both sides, a wall of black-green, and the air grew heavier with the scent of sulfur and sea salt. I drove with the focus of a man who had nothing left to lose. My hands on the steering wheel were steady, my mind a cold, calculating machine. I had called Kai. He met me at a turnoff near the old sugar mill ruins, driving his beat-up truck with the lights off. He had brought gear, tactical flashlights, ropes, a first aid kit, and a suppressed pistol. We did not speak. We knew the drill. We parked the vehicles deep in the brush, covering them with palm fronds. We moved on foot toward the coast. The sea caves were a labyrinth of volcanic tubes carved by centuries of waves. The tide was coming in the water, crashing against the rocks with a rhythmic booming sound that masked our footsteps. Kai led the way. He knew this coast better than anyone. He stopped at the entrance to a particularly narrow fissure in the cliff face. It looked like a shadow, a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. "This is it," Kai whispered. "The locals call it the Devil's Throat. It goes deep. If he is hiding someone, this is the only place dry enough at high tide." We entered. The air inside was cool and damp. The sound of the ocean was muffled, replaced by the dripping of water from the ceiling. We moved slowly, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. 50 yards in the tunnel opened up into a cavern. The floor was covered in sand and debris. And there, in the center of the cavern, illuminated by a single battery-powered lantern, was a man. He was tied to a stalagmite with heavy marine rope. His head hung low, his chin resting on his chest. He was shirtless, his skin pale and bruised. Marcus. My heart stopped. For a second I thought we were too late. He looked lifeless, but then his chest moved, a shallow, ragged breath. I rushed forward, dropping my cane. I fell to my knees beside him. "Marcus," I whispered. "Son." He groaned. His eyelids fluttered. They were swollen, crusted with salt. He tried to lift his head, but he was too weak. "Dad," he rasped. His voice was a dry croak. Am I dead?" "No, son. I said, my own voice thick with emotion. You are alive. I am here. Kai was already at work cutting the ropes with a serrated knife. He checked Marcus's pulse, his pupils. He is dehydrated, Kai said. Severe exposure, but no major arterial bleeding. He has been beaten, though. Badly. We got him free. Marcus slumped into my arms. He smelled of sweat and fear in the sea. I held him tight, feeling the heat of his body, the beat of his heart. He was real. He was here. Water, Marcus whispered. I held a canteen to his lips. He drank greedily, coughing as the water hit his parched throat. Slowly, I said. Slowly. We need to move him, Kai said. The tide is rising, and Rico could be back any minute. We carried him out. It was a struggle. Marcus was dead weight, his legs refusing to work. Kai took his shoulders. I took his legs. We moved through the tunnel, grunting with effort, adrenaline fueling our aging muscles. When we emerged into the night air, the wind felt like a blessing. We loaded him into the back of Kai's truck. Where to? Kai asked. Not the hospital. Rico will have eyes there. The base, I said. You still have friends at the Naval Infirmary. Off the books. Kai nodded. He started the engine. The drive was tense. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering about water, about darkness. I held his hand the whole way, squeezing it every time he moaned, letting him know he was not alone. The infirmary was quiet, a small sterile room in the back of the base. A Dr. Kai trusted a woman named Captain Lee treated Marcus without asking questions. She hooked him up to an IV, cleaned his wounds, and gave him a sedative. He needs rest, she said. He is in shock, but he is strong. He will recover. I sat by his bedside as he slept. I watched the rise and fall of his chest. I thought about the boy he used to be, the man he had become, and the monster he had married. Hours later, Marcus opened his eyes. They were clearer now. The fog of dehydration was lifting. Dad, he said. He tried to sit up, but I pushed him gently back. Easy, Marcus. You are safe. He looked around the room. He looked at me. Then he started to cry. It was a silent, racking sob that shook his whole body. She did it, Dad, he whispered. Tiffany, she did it. I know, son, I said. I know. Tell me. He took a deep breath. He stared at the ceiling, replaying the horror. She told me she wanted to go for a night swim. It was romantic, she said. Just us, away from the tourists. We went down to the rocks. She brought wine, or I thought it was wine. He paused, swallowing hard. It tasted bitter. I asked her about it. She laughed. She said it was just the sea air. But then, my legs, they felt heavy. My arms felt like lead. I tried to stand up, but I couldn't. I fell. And she watched. She just stood there, Dad. She watched me crawl. She watched me beg. And then, she kicked me. She kicked me into the water. I closed my eyes. The image was vivid, brutal. I went under, Marcus continued. I couldn't swim. My body wouldn't listen. I swallowed water. I thought that was it. I saw her face as I sank. She was smiling. But then, hands, rough hands, grabbing me, pulling me down, then up. It was Rico. He had scuba gear. He dragged me underwater, away from the shore. He took me to a boat. Why? I asked. Why did he save you? He laughed when he pulled me onto the deck, Marcus said. He told me I was worth more alive than dead. He said Tiffany paid him to kill me, but he was going to make her pay again to keep the secret. He took me to the cave. He tied me up. He told me if I made a sound, he would finish the job. I squeezed his hand. He underestimated you, Marcus, and he underestimated me. Marcus looked at me. His eyes were full of pain, but also a dawning realization. She tried to kill me, Dad. My wife. She wanted me dead for what? Money. For everything I said. The house. The insurance. She wanted to erase you and take the check. He closed his eyes again. Tears leaked out. I am so stupid, he whispered. You tried to warn me. You tried to tell me she wasn't right, and I pushed you away. I chose her over you. We do not talk about that now, I said firmly. You were in love. Love makes us blind. But sight has returned. He looked at me. What do we do? She thinks I am dead. I smiled. It was a cold, hard smile. Let her think that, I said. Let her believe she won. Why? Because we need a confession, Marcus. We need her to sign her name to the lie. We need her to commit the fraud on paper. If you appear now, she will claim it was an accident. She will say she tried to save you. She will say she panicked. She will get a lawyer and she might walk away with a slap on the wrist. But if she claims the insurance, if she sells the house, if she signs a sworn affidavit that you are dead when she knows she killed you, that is life in prison. That is federal fraud. That is the end of her. Marcus nodded slowly. He understood. He was an architect. He knew about foundations. He knew about building a structure that could not be knocked down. I need you to stay dead for a few more days, son, I said. Can you do that? He clenched his jaw. He looked at his bruised arms. For her. Yes. I can be a ghost. Good, I said. Rest now. Get your strength back. You have a funeral to attend. A funeral. Yours, I said. She is holding a memorial service at the house on Saturday. She is going to play the grieving widow one last time. Marcus let out a short, bitter laugh. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I stood up. I adjusted my jacket. I am going back to Chicago, I said. I have to prepare the stage. You stay here with Kai. He will bring you home when I give the signal, Dad, Marcus said. He reached out and grabbed my hand again. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, I said. The job is not done. I walked out of the infirmary. The night air was cool. I had my son back. He was broken, but he was alive. Tiffany had tried to drown him. She had tried to burn him. She had tried to bury him. But she forgot one thing. Bookers do not drown. We hold our breath. And when we come up for air, we bring the storm with us. I headed for the airport. The final act was about to begin. And Tiffany had front row seats to her own destruction. The flight back to Chicago was a blur of turbulence and stale coffee. I sat in coach squeezed between a crying baby and a man who snored like a diesel engine. I did not sleep. I stared at the seat back in front of me, rehearsing my lines. I was about to give the performance of a lifetime. I had to be pathetic. I had to be broken. I had to be the defeated father who had lost his son and his mind. I landed at O'Hare at 7 in the evening. It was raining. A cold, miserable drizzle that slicked the streets and made the city look like it was weeping. I took a cab to my house, or rather the house that Tiffany believed was hers. When the taxi turned onto my street, I saw the lights. My house was glowing. Every window was ablaze. There were cars parked up and down the block. Luxury sedans. SUVs, a catering van was parked in the driveway. I rolled down the window. I heard music. It was not a funeral dirge. It was not a somber cello. It was jazz. Upbeat, brassy jazz. The kind of music you play when you close a merger or win the lottery. She was throwing a party. She called it a memorial service in the email she sent to Marcus's colleagues, but this was a victory lap. She was celebrating the payday. She was dancing on my son's grave before the dirt was even poured. I told the driver to stop at the end of the driveway. I paid him with crumpled bills. I stepped out into the rain. I was wearing the same suit I had worn for 3 days. It was wrinkled, stained with travel and sweat. I had not shaved. I leaned heavily on my cane, letting my posture collapse. I looked like a man who had been chewed up by grief and spit out by the system. I walked up the driveway. The rain plastered my thin hair to my skull. Through the large bay window I could see them. People holding champagne flutes, waiters passing trays of hors d'oeuvres. I saw strangers laughing. I saw people drinking my wine. And then I saw her. Tiffany was standing in the center of the living room. She was wearing a black dress, but it was cut low tight, designed to draw eyes, not tears. She held a glass of champagne in one hand and was gesturing expansively with the other. She looked radiant. She looked rich. I reached the front door. It was unlocked. I pushed it open and stumbled inside. The noise hit me first. The chatter, the clinking of glass, the laughter, then the smell, expensive perfume, roasted garlic, money. I stood in the foyer, dripping wet. A muddy puddle formed around my shoes on the marble tile. Someone gasped. The music seemed to stutter. Heads turned. The chatter died down, replaced by an awkward, heavy silence. Tiffany spun around. Her smile vanished instantly, replaced by a look of pure, unadulterated disgust. She marched toward me, her heels clicking on the floor like the hammer of a gun. "What are you doing here?" she hissed. She stopped 3 feet away from me, as if afraid my poverty might be contagious. I came home," I stammered. My voice was weak, cracking. "I had nowhere else to go. This is not your home, Elijah. I told you. I sold it. The buyers are coming tomorrow for the final walkthrough. You are trespassing." She looked around at her guests. She forced a sad, pitying smile. "I am so sorry, everyone," she announced, her voice pitching up into a performance of long-suffering patience. "This is Marcus's father. He is very confused. The dementia has been getting worse since the accident. He forgets things. He forgets where he lives." A murmur of sympathy rippled through the room. Poor Tiffany. So strong. Dealing with a dead husband and a crazy father-in-law. She turned back to me, her eyes hard as flint. "Get out. Get out before I call the police. You are ruining the memorial." I looked at her. I looked at the people judging me. I saw contempt in their eyes. I saw annoyance. It was time. I dropped my cane. It clattered loudly on the floor. I fell to my knees. It was a painful, jarring impact, but I did not wince. I let my shoulders shake. I clasped my hands together in a gesture of absolute supplication. "Please, Tiffany," I begged. I wailed it. I let the desperation bleed into my voice. "Please do not throw me out." "Not yet." "Elijah, get up," she snapped. "You are making a scene." "I just want the photos," I cried. "I just want the photo album from the den. The one with Marcus as a baby. And I need to sign the papers." She paused. She frowned. "What papers?" "The insurance." I sobbed. I looked up at her, tears streaming down my face mixed with the rain. I found the policy. In his safety deposit box key. The one I hid. It is a legacy policy. $5 million. The room went deadly silent. I saw the number hit her like a physical blow. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. $5 million, she whispered. "Yes," I blubbered. "He took it out years ago, before he met you. It names me as the beneficiary, but I cannot use it. I am old. I am dying. I do not need money. I want you to have it. You are his wife. You deserve it. I want to transfer it to you, tonight, before they take me away to the home." I saw the gears turning in her head. I saw the greed override the caution. I saw the dollar signs spinning like a slot machine that had just hit the jackpot. $5 million. That was 10 times what she had stolen from the bank account. That was enough to buy her way into high society in Paris forever. It was the ultimate prize. But she was suspicious. She was a grifter after all. "You have the policy?" she asked. Her voice was trembling, trying to stay casual. I patted the wet breast pocket of my jacket. "I have the transfer forms," I said. "And the agent." I called the agent. He said I just need to sign it over. "I need a witness. And I need you to promise you will take care of his ashes." I hung my head, sobbing into my chest. "I am so tired, Tiffany. I just want to do right by my boy and then go. Please, let me sign it. Let me give it to you." Tiffany looked at the guests. She looked at me, a broken, wet heap on her floor. She looked at the potential for $5 million tax-free dollars. She licked her lips. The disgust on her face vanished, replaced by a predatory sweetness that was far more terrifying. "Oh, Elijah," she said. She crouched down, disregarding her expensive dress. She put a hand on my wet shoulder. She smelled of champagne and malice. "I am so sorry," she cooed. "I didn't know." "Of course you can come in. Of course we can handle this." She stood up and addressed the room. "Everyone, please give us a moment," she said, her voice thick with fake emotion. "My father-in-law is grieving. He needs family right now. Please enjoy the food. The band will take a break." She grabbed my arm. She gripped it hard, her nails digging into my skin. She pulled me up. "Come to the study, Elijah," she whispered. "Let's get you dried off. And let's look at those papers." She led me through the crowd. People parted for us. They patted my back. "Stay strong," someone said. "She is a saint," another whispered about Tiffany. I shuffled along, leaning on her for support. I kept my head down. I kept my sobbing rhythmic. But inside I was ice. She had taken the bait. She had opened the door. She was leading me into the very room she had drilled open 3 days ago. She thought she was walking toward a fortune. She did not know she was walking into an interrogation room. We entered the study. She closed the door and locked it. The sound of the party muffled instantly. She turned to me. The mask dropped slightly. "Show me," she demanded. "Show me the policy." I reached into my jacket. My hand was shaking. I pulled out a thick, water-stained envelope. It was heavy. It looked official. I sat down in Marcus's leather chair, the chair she had claimed. I need a pen," I whispered. "And I need a drink. Water, please." She huffed, impatient. She went to the sidebar and poured a glass of water from a crystal pitcher. She slammed it down on the desk. "Here, drink, then sign." I took a sip. I watched her over the rim of the glass. She was hovering. She was practically vibrating. You have to sign too," I said. "To accept the transfer. It is a liability waiver." "I will sign anything," she said. "Just give it to me." I opened the envelope slowly. I pulled out a stack of papers. They were thick bond paper filled with legal jargon. I had spent 6 hours printing them at a Kinko's in Honolulu before I left. I had drafted them myself using templates from old fraud cases. They looked perfect. But buried in the text on page 4, paragraph 3 was a clause that no lawyer in their right mind would let a client sign. It was a confession. A binding sworn statement of fact regarding the time and manner of death. I laid the papers on the desk. I smoothed them out. Where do I sign?" I asked, squinting. She grabbed the papers. She flipped to the back page. She saw the line marked "Beneficiary Transfer." "Right here," she said, pointing. "Sign here." I picked up the pen. I held it over the paper. I let the tip hover. "Tiffany," I said softly. Are you sure? Are you sure he is gone?" She froze. She looked at me. Her eyes were dark holes. "What kind of question is that, Elijah?" "I saw him die. I saw the ashes. Sign the damn paper. I saw him die. That was it. That was the verbal confirmation." She had always told the police she was on the beach. She told them she looked away. But now for $5 million she was claiming witness. I signed. My signature was shaky, illegible. "Now I said, you have to sign the acceptance." She snatched the pen. She didn't read. She didn't look at the clauses. She flipped to the next line and scribbled her name with a flourish. "Tiffany Booker." She smiled. It was a smile of pure triumph. There she said, "It is done. Now give me the policy number so I can call the bank." I looked at the paper. I looked at her signature. I stopped shaking. I sat up straight. I took a deep breath of the air in my son's office. I removed my glasses. I wiped the rain from my face with a handkerchief. I looked at her with the clear, sharp eyes of the auditor. "There is no policy number, Tiffany," I said. My voice was no longer weak. It was a baritone rumble. Her smile faltered. "What?" "There is no $5 million, I said. She stared at me. Confusion clouded her face. "But the papers. You signed." I pointed to the document she had just executed. "Read paragraph 3, Tiffany." She looked down. She frowned. She read, "I, Tiffany Booker, hereby certify under penalty of perjury that I was present at the time of Marcus Booker's death, that I witnessed the event, and that I hold sole knowledge of the circumstances regarding the disposal of his remains." She looked up. Her face went pale. "What is this? This isn't an insurance transfer?" "No," I said. "It is an affidavit. You just admitted you were there. You just admitted you know what happened to the body. You just contradicted every statement you gave to the Honolulu Police Department." I stood up. I picked up the paper. "You lied to the police, Tiffany. You said you were sunbathing. You said you didn't see him go under. But for $5 million, you just swore you watched him die." She lunged for the paper. "Give that to me." I pulled it back. I was faster than she expected. "It is too late," I said. I folded it and put it in my inside pocket. "You tricked me," she screamed. "You old bastard. You tricked me." "I did not trick you," I said calmly. "I just audited you. And you came up short." She backed away, her eyes darting around the room. She was looking for a weapon. She was realizing that the old man was not a victim. He was the executioner. "Get out!" she shrieked. "Get out of my house!" I smiled. It was the same smile I gave her when she called me at 3 a.m. "Your house?" I asked. I walked to the door. I unlocked it. "I think we should ask the real owner about that." I opened the door. The party was still going on outside, but the music was about to stop, because tomorrow the buyer was coming. And Tiffany was going to try to sell a house she didn't own with a deed she stole to a woman who carried a badge. The trap was sprung. The confession was signed. Now all I had to do was wait for the morning. "Sleep well, Tiffany," I said. "It is the last night you will ever spend in a soft bed." The party outside the heavy oak doors of the study had turned into a dull roar, a background static of greed and champagne. Inside the room, however, the air was sharp enough to cut glass. Tiffany was pacing. She had kicked off her heels and was walking barefoot on the Persian rug my son had bought in Istanbul. She was on her phone barking orders at someone on the other end of the line. "Get over here, Lionel. I do not care if it is raining. I do not care if you are in bed. This is $5 million. Do you want your cut or not?" "Yes. Bring the seal. We need this notarized tonight." She hung up and looked at me. Her eyes were manic. The pupils were dilated, swallowing the iris. It was the look of a gambler who has just pushed every chip into the center of the table on a single hand of poker. "He is coming," she said. "Lionel is coming. He will handle the legal language. You just sit there and try not to die before he gets here." I sat in the leather wingback chair, huddled into my damp suit jacket. I held the thick, water-stained envelope against my chest as if it were a shield. I made my hands tremble. I made my breathing shallow and wheezy. I was playing the part of the overwhelmed patriarch, the man whose mind was dissolving under the weight of grief and confusion. But behind my glasses, my eyes were scanning the room. I was checking the angles. I was making sure the hidden camera I had installed in the spine of a fake book on the shelf 3 years ago, a precaution I took when I first noticed cash missing from my wallet after her visits, was active. The tiny red LED was masked, but I knew it was recording. It took 20 minutes for Lionel Blanton to arrive. He looked even sleazier than he had at his office. He was wearing a raincoat over pajamas and slippers. He smelled of stale gin and annoyance. "This better be real, Tiffany," he grumbled, shaking his umbrella onto the hardwood floor. "I am not driving across town in a monsoon for another one of your schemes that pays out in IOU notes." "Show him, Elijah," Tiffany commanded. She pointed a manicured finger at me. "Show him the policy." I fumbled with the envelope. My fingers slipped on the paper. I dropped it once, then picked it up with an apology that was little more than a whimper. I pulled out the sheaf of documents I had forged in the business center of the Honolulu hotel. They were masterpieces. I used 24-pound bond paper slightly yellowed to suggest age. I had used a dot matrix font for the older dates and a laser font for the updates. I had forged the letterhead of a defunct insurance giant that had been acquired years ago, adding a layer of bureaucratic complexity that would make immediate verification impossible. Lionel snatched the papers from my hand. He adjusted his glasses and started to read. "Holy Mother," he whispered. $5 million. Double indemnity for accidental death. He looked up at me, his eyes wide. "You have been sitting on this." "Why, I forgot," I stuttered. "I put it away years ago. Marcus told me to keep it safe. He said if anything ever happened to him, this was for the family. But I am old. I do not need $5 million. I just want peace." Lionel looked at Tiffany. He licked his lips. "This is legitimate paper, Tiff. The policy number formats are correct. The dates line up. This is the jackpot." Tiffany squealed. It was a high, piercing sound of pure avarice. She grabbed Lionel's arm. "Draft the transfer," she ordered. "I want him to sign over full beneficiary rights to me. Irrevocable. Immediate." "I have the forms right here," Lionel said, pulling a laptop out of his bag. "I just need to type up a quick assignment of benefits." "No," I interrupted. My voice was soft, but it carried across the room. They both looked at me. I brought the forms," I said. "The agent, Mr. Henderson. He sent them to me when I called him. He said I have to use these specific forms because the policy is so old. He said if we use new forms, the company will audit the claim." The word audit hit the room like a physical weight. Tiffany froze. Lionel stiffened. "We do not want an audit," Tiffany said quickly. "An audit takes months. An audit asks questions." "Exactly," I said. Mr. Henderson said. He said if we use the expedited claim form, the money wires in 48 hours. But we have to sign it exactly as it is written. I pulled the second stack of papers from the envelope. These were the trap. Lionel took them. He scanned them quickly. He was looking for dollar amounts and percentages. He was not looking for the clauses I had buried in the fine print. He was a strip mall lawyer who chased ambulances, not a contract specialist. "Standard liability waiver," Lionel muttered. "Survivor's affidavit. Beneficiary assignment. It looks boilerplate." He put the papers on the desk. He took out his notary stamp. "Sign here, Elijah," he said, pointing to the bottom line. I stood up slowly. I walked to the desk. I leaned on my cane. I picked up the pen. I signed my name. I made it shaky. I made it look like the signature of a man who was signing away his life. "Now you, Tiffany," I said. You have to sign the affidavit of circumstances. What is that? She snapped. Mr. Henderson said, because there is no body yet, because he was cremated so fast. The insurance company needs a sworn statement from a witness, someone who was there, someone who can swear he is gone. Otherwise, they wait 7 years to declare death in absentia. 7 years! Tiffany shouted. I am not waiting 7 minutes. Give me the pen. She grabbed the pen from my hand. She bent over the desk. Wait, I said. I reached out and put my hand on her wrist. My grip was surprisingly strong. She looked up startled. Tiffany, look at me. She looked. Her eyes were hard, impatient. Are you sure? I asked. My voice dropped an octave. I let the senility slip away for just a fraction of a second. I let her see the father. Are you absolutely sure he is dead? Because if you sign this, if you swear on this paper that you saw him die, and he walks through that door tomorrow, that is prison, Tiffany. That is perjury. That is insurance fraud. She laughed. It was a bark of laughter, harsh and ugly. You old fool, she said. She shook my hand off her wrist. You think I am guessing? I was there. I watched him go under. I watched the bubbles stop. And I have the ashes in a box. He is dead, Elijah. Dead as a doornail. She pressed the pen to the paper. I certify, she read aloud, mocking me that I, Tiffany Booker, personally witnessed the death of Marcus Booker by drowning on the date specified, and that his body was recovered and cremated under my direct supervision. She signed it. She pressed down so hard the pen tore the paper slightly. A jagged, aggressive signature. Tiffany Booker. She stood up and smirked. There. Are you happy now? Are you satisfied? I looked at the signature. It was beautiful. It was the nail in her coffin. I looked at Lionel. Notarize it, I said. Lionel stamped the document. The heavy thud of the embosser sounded like a gavel coming down. He signed his name as the witness. It is done, Lionel said. He handed the papers to Tiffany. Congratulations, Mrs. Booker. You are a very wealthy woman. Tiffany clutched the papers to her chest. She closed her eyes and inhaled as if she were smelling the money. Thank you, Elijah, she said, opening her eyes. She looked at me with a pity that was more insulting than her hatred. You finally did something useful. Now get out. Get out, I asked. Go to the kitchen. Get some food scraps. Then go to your room. I have to make calls. I have to transfer these funds. I did not move. I stood by the desk. I looked at the papers in her arms. I need a copy, I said. For my records. She scoffed. You do not have records, Elijah. You have memories. And you are losing those too. Lionel, show him out. Lionel stepped forward. He put a hand on my shoulder. Come on, old-timer. Let the lady work. I shrugged his hand off. I did not stumble. I did not shake. I stood up to my full height of 6 feet. I straightened my spine. I adjusted my tie. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. The real one. I tapped the screen. What are you doing? Tiffany asked. Her brow furrowed. I am sending a copy of the audio recording of this meeting to the district attorney, I said. My voice was clear. It was the voice that had made CFOs sweat in deposition rooms for 40 years. Tiffany froze. Lionel took a step back. What audio recording? Lionel asked. The one where you admitted you saw him die, Tiffany, I said. The one where you admitted you watched the bubbles stop. So what? She said, her voice rising. He drowned. It was an accident. Was it? I asked. I walked around the desk. I sat in Marcus's chair. I interlaced my fingers on the mahogany surface. Because if it was an accident, why did you pay Enrico Salvatore $30,000 over the last 3 months? Tiffany dropped the papers. They fluttered to the floor like dead leaves. Who? She whispered. Rico, I said. Your old friend from Miami. The diving instructor. The man you hired to stage the accident. She turned pale. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I know about the payments, Tiffany. I have the bank records. I know about the shell company in the Caymans. I know about the flight to Paris you pretended to take. Lionel looked at Tiffany. He looked at me. He looked at the door. He started to back away. I didn't know anything about this, he stammered. I just notarized a signature. I am leaving. Sit down, Lionel, I barked. It was a command. Lionel sat on the floor. You signed that affidavit, Tiffany. I continued, my eyes locking onto hers. You swore under penalty of perjury that you witnessed his death. You swore you recovered the body. So what? She screamed. She was shaking now. Her hands were clawing at the air. He is dead. You cannot prove anything. The ocean took him. The ocean spits things back out, I said, especially when they are not dead. She stopped breathing. The room went silent. What did you say? She whispered. I leaned forward. I said Marcus is a strong swimmer, and dead men do not testify. But you just did. You just testified that you saw him die, so if he walks into a courtroom, if he walks into this house, that signature you just put on that paper is a confession to attempted murder. She shook her head violently. No. I saw him sink. Rico said he took care of it. Rico lied, I said, just like you lied. I stood up. I walked over to the papers on the floor. I picked up the affidavit. I folded it carefully and put it in my pocket. This is not an insurance claim, Tiffany. This is a warrant. And you just signed it. She lunged at me. She screamed a primal sound of rage and terror. She clawed at my face. I caught her wrists. I held them tight. It is over, I said. Get out, she shrieked. Get out of my house, your house, I asked. I released her wrists and pushed her back. She stumbled against the bookshelf. Tomorrow morning, I said. The buyer comes, the woman you are trying to sell this house to. She stared at me, panting. What about her? Sell it to her, I said. Try to sell it. Show her the deed. Show her the power of attorney. I walked to the door. I unlocked it. Because when you do, you will find out that the only thing you own in this world is a one-way ticket to a cell. I opened the door. The party noise flooded back in. Enjoy the champagne, Tiffany, I said. It is going to be a long night. I walked out into the hallway. I left her standing there, surrounded by the wreckage of her own greed. She had signed the ghost policy. She had insured herself against a death that never happened. And now the premium was due. The next morning, the sky was a bruised purple, heavy with the threat of another storm. The party guests had long since departed, leaving behind a battlefield of empty champagne flutes and canapé trays. Tiffany had not slept. I could hear her pacing the upstairs hallway all night, the frantic click-clack of her heels, a testament to her unraveling nerves. She was waiting for the final piece of her puzzle to click into place, the sale of the house. At 9 o'clock sharp, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. It was sleek, polished, and expensive. The driver, a man in a dark suit, opened the rear door. A woman stepped out. She was impressive. She wore a tailored cream suit that probably cost more than my first car. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant chignon. She wore oversized sunglasses that hid her eyes completely. She carried a leather briefcase. She looked like money. She looked like a cash buyer who didn't ask questions about inspections or permits. I watched from the kitchen window, sipping my black coffee. Tiffany rushed to the front door, her face a mask of desperate charm. She had reapplied her makeup, but it couldn't hide the dark circles or the tremor in her hands. "Welcome, welcome," Tiffany gushed, opening the door wide. "Please come in. Ignore the mess. We had a small gathering last night to honor my late husband." The woman stepped into the foyer. She did not smile. She looked around the space with a critical, appraising eye. She took off her sunglasses, slowly revealing sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Booker," the woman said. Her voice was cool, professional. "I am Eleanor Vance. My associates told me this property was available for immediate acquisition." Yes, absolutely," Tiffany said, practically vibrating. "It is a gem, prime location, classic architecture. My husband, he was an architect. He designed the renovations himself." "I see," Ms. Vance said. She walked into the living room, her heels silent on the rug. She ran a gloved hand along the mantel of the fireplace. "And the title, is it clear?" "Completely," Tiffany lied. "I am the sole beneficiary. My husband left everything to me. I have all the paperwork right here." She gestured to the dining room table where she had laid out the forged will, the fake death certificate she had printed off the internet, and the power of attorney she had forced me to acknowledge. Ms. Vance walked over to the table. She picked up the death certificate. She studied it for a long moment. "This is a copy," she stated. "The original is with the county clerk," Tiffany said quickly. "But that is a certified copy. It is legal." Ms. Vance put it down. She picked up the will. She looked at the signature I had photographed the day before. the signature with the wrong flourish. "And this will," Ms. Vance said. "It was executed recently. Just before we left for Hawaii," Tiffany said. "He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He knew he might not come back. He had a premonition." "A premonition," Ms. Vance repeated. "Or perhaps a plan." Tiffany froze. She laughed nervously. "Excuse me. I mean, Ms. Vance said, turning to face her. "It is fortunate that he prepared his estate so thoroughly before an accidental drowning." "Yes," Tiffany said, her smile tight. "Fortunate." "And the father," Ms. Vance asked. "The old man living here. Does he have a claim?" Tiffany waved a hand dismissively. "Elijah, no. He is not well. Dementia. He doesn't even know what day it is. I am his legal guardian now. I have the papers for that too. I am selling the house to pay for his care facility. It is what Marcus wanted." I stepped out of the kitchen then. I walked into the dining room. I was dressed in my best suit. I was shaved. I stood tall, leaning lightly on my cane, not for support, but for style. "Good morning," I said. My voice was deep and steady. Tiffany spun around. "Elijah, go back to your room. We have guests." Ms. Vance looked at me. She did not look surprised. She nodded slightly. "Mr. Booker," she said, "it is an honor to meet you." Tiffany looked between us. Confusion flickered in her eyes. You know him?" "We have mutual friends," Ms. Vance said. She opened her briefcase. She did not take out a checkbook. She did not take out a contract. She took out a badge. It was gold. It was heavy. It was mounted on leather. "Special Agent Eleanor Vance, FBI," she said. Her voice dropped the pretense of the wealthy buyer. It became the voice of federal law enforcement. Financial Crimes Division. Tiffany stared at the badge. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She took a step back, bumping into the table. What is this?" she whispered. "Mrs. Tiffany Booker," Agent Vance said, stepping forward. "You just attempted to sell a property you do not own using forged legal documents across state lines. That is wire fraud. That is title fraud." "No!" Tiffany screamed. "I own this house. My husband left it to me." "Your husband did not leave you this house," I said, stepping closer. "Because the deed is a joint tenancy with right of survivorship. It belongs to me, and even if it didn't, you cannot inherit from a man you murdered." "I didn't murder him," Tiffany shrieked. "He drowned. It was an accident." Agent Vance reached into her briefcase again. She pulled out a file. She slapped it onto the table next to the fake will. "We have the bank records, Tiffany," Vance said. "We have the transfers to Enrico Salvatore. We have the shell company in the Cayman Islands. We have the flight manifest for the private jet you chartered to Gary, Indiana." "That proves nothing," Tiffany yelled. "I sent money to a friend I was going on vacation." "And the insurance policy?" I asked. "The $5 million policy you signed last night, the one where you swore under penalty of perjury that you witnessed his death." Tiffany looked at me. The hatred in her eyes was toxic. "You tricked me. That was a trap. It was an audit," I corrected. "And you failed." "You are under investigation for federal insurance fraud," Agent Vance continued. "Attempting to claim benefits on a policy that doesn't exist based on a death you staged." "Staged?" Tiffany laughed hysterically. "He is dead. I have his ashes. They are right there." She pointed to the mantel where the small brass urn sat. "That," I said, "is a box of pig bones and barbecue ash. We tested it, Tiffany. There is no human DNA in there." She went white. Rico sent it. He said he took care of it." "Rico lied," I said. "Rico kept the money and he sent you garbage because he knew you wouldn't check. He knew you were too arrogant to look inside." Tiffany backed away. She hit the wall. She looked at the door. The path was blocked by Agent Vance. She looked at the kitchen. "You can't prove he's alive," she hissed. "If he's not in that box, he's at the bottom of the ocean. You have no body. You have no witness. You have nothing." "We have the video from the pool," I said. "We have the audio of you smashing my computer. We have your signature on the affidavit." "Circumstantial?" she screamed. "All of it. My husband is dead. I am a widow. You are harassing a grieving woman." She was unraveling. The cool, calculating sociopath was gone. In her place was a terrified, cornered animal lashing out at the bars of her cage. "I have rights," she yelled. "I want my lawyer, Lionel Call." Lionel. Lionel is currently answering questions at the district attorney's office, Agent Vance said calmly. He was very eager to discuss your business arrangement regarding the notary seal. Tiffany slid down the wall. She sat on the floor, her expensive cream suit pooling around her. She put her head in her hands. "He's dead," she sobbed. "I know he's dead. I watched him go under. I watched him stop moving. He can't be alive." I walked over to her. I stood over her. "You watched him go under," I repeated. "You watched him stop moving." "Yes." "Bah," she cried, looking up at me. "I saw it. It's over. He's gone. I won." "You really believe that?" I said softly. "I know it," she screamed. "He is dead, dead, dead." I looked at Agent Vance. She nodded. She reached for her radio. "Bring him in," she said into the mic. The front door opened. Tiffany turned her head. She looked toward the foyer. The silhouette in the doorway was backlit by the morning sun. It was tall, broad-shouldered. Tiffany stopped breathing. She scrambled backward, crab-walking across the rug, her heels scraping the floor. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." The figure stepped into the room. Dante was pushing the wheelchair, but the man sitting in it was sitting upright. He was pale. He was thin. His arms were bandaged. But his eyes were the same eyes that had looked at her with love for 2 years. Now they looked at her with a judgment that was absolute. "Hello, Tiffany," Marcus said. His voice was raspy, damaged by salt water and screaming. Tiffany screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a sound of pure, primal terror. She covered her face with her hands. "You're dead," she shrieked. "I killed you! I killed you!" "You tried," Marcus said. "But you forgot one thing. I learned to hold my breath a long time ago." Tiffany curled into a ball on the floor. She was rocking back and forth. "Ghost, ghost, ghost." "Not a ghost," I said. "Just a son who came home." Agent Vance stepped forward. She pulled Tiffany's hands away from her face. She clicked the handcuffs onto her wrists. "Tiffany Booker," she said, "you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Marcus Booker, conspiracy to commit wire fraud and federal insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Tiffany didn't remain silent. She laughed, a high broken sound. "He's dead," she mumbled. "I saw the bubble stop. He's dead." "Take her away," I said. 2 uniformed officers entered and lifted her up. She dragged her feet. She stared at Marcus as they hauled her out. Her eyes were empty. The greed had burned them out. When the door closed, the house was silent again. I looked at Marcus. He looked at me. "She sold us out for a ticket to Paris," he whispered. "She bought a ticket to prison," I said. "And it's a non-stop flight." I walked over to him and put my hand on his shoulder. "Welcome home, son," I said. The buyer had come. The deal was closed, and Tiffany had paid the ultimate price. She screamed. It was a sound that tore through the heavy air of the dining room, a raw, jagged noise that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with terror. Tiffany backed away from Agent Vance, stumbling over the hem of her expensive cream trousers. She pointed a shaking finger at the brass urn on the mantel. The metal gleamed under the recessed lighting, a silent golden idol to her deception. "He is dead," she shrieked, her voice cracked, spiraling into hysteria. "I have the proof." "It is right there. That is him. That is Marcus." I carried that box through customs. I held it on my lap on the plane. You cannot tell me he is alive because I am looking at his remains. I watched her unravel. It was a fascinating, horrific spectacle. The composure she had worn like armor for the last week was gone. She was frantic. She was sweating. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a lawyer, looking for anyone who would validate her lie. "That is a box of carbon and bone meal, Tiffany," I said. My voice was calm, a low rumble against her high-pitched panic. "We tested it. There is no DNA. There is no Marcus in that jar. There never was. You are lying," she yelled. "You are trying to trick me into a confession." But I know what I saw. I saw the bubbles stop. I saw him sink into the black water. He did not come up. He could not come up. She was confessing again. In her desperation to prove he was dead, she was confirming she had watched him die. Agent Vance did not interrupt. She simply stood there, a silent witness, letting Tiffany dig the hole deeper with every frantic word. Rico told me. Tiffany gasped, clutching her chest. Rico said it was done. He said he took care of the body. He said he burned it on the beach. He sent me the video of the fire. Rico lied, I said. No. No. She shook her head violently. Her hair came loose from its severe bun, falling in messy strands across her face. He wouldn't. We had a deal. $50,000. He wouldn't cross me. He did not cross you because he wanted to, I said. He crossed you because Marcus made him a better offer. She froze. She stared at me. A better offer. His life, I said. Marcus offered him the only thing that matters, the chance to not be a murderer. Rico took the money, yes. But he kept the asset, because Rico knows that a dead man pays once, but a live hostage pays forever. She was breathing hard, hyperventilating. Her world was tilting on its axis. The narrative she had constructed, the reality she had lived in for the last 5 days, was dissolving. Prove it, she hissed. If he is alive, where is he? Show me. You have nothing but stories, Elijah. You are a sad old man making up fairy tales to avoid the truth. My husband is dead. I looked at the front door. I looked at the heavy oak panels that separated the lie from the truth. I do not have to prove anything, Tiffany, I said. I nodded to the hallway. Open it. The command hung in the air. Tiffany looked at the door. Agent Vance stepped back, giving her a clear line of sight. Suddenly, the sound of a heavy latch clicking echoed through the silence. It was the front door. It was unlocking. Tiffany stopped breathing. She pressed her back against the dining room wall. She gripped the silk wallpaper with her fingernails. The door swung inward. A shaft of morning light cut through the gloom of the hallway. Dust motes danced in the beam. And then the sound of rubber wheels on hardwood. Squeak, squeak, squeak. A figure emerged from the brightness. Dante was pushing the wheelchair. His face was grim, set in a hard line. But I did not look at Dante. I looked at the man in the chair. Marcus. He looked like a specter. He was thin, gaunt. His skin was pale, almost translucent, covered in healing cuts and deep purple bruises. His left arm was in a sling. His right leg was wrapped in thick bandages. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and sweatpants that hung loosely on his frame. But his eyes were alive. They were burning with a cold blue fire that I had never seen in my gentle, artistic son. They were the eyes of a man who had looked into the abyss and climbed his way back out. He sat upright. He did not slump. He gripped the armrests of the wheelchair with white-knuckled intensity. He rolled into the dining room. He stopped 10 feet from her. The silence was absolute. It was heavy. It was suffocating. Tiffany stared. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her mouth opened, but no air went in or out. Her brain was misfiring. It could not reconcile the image in front of her with the memory of the water. "Ma," she whispered. It was a breath, a release of air. "Ma, Marcus." She slid down the wall. Her legs gave out. She collapsed onto the expensive Persian rug, a heap of cream fabric and terror. She covered her mouth with her hands. "No," she moaned. "No. It is a trick. It is a hologram. You are dead. I killed you." Marcus looked down at her. He did not shout. He did not scream. His voice was a rasp, a sound like sandpaper on stone. It was damaged by the salt water he had swallowed, by the screams he had suppressed in the cave. "Hello, Tiffany," he said. She scrambled backward. She crab-walked across the floor, pushing herself away with her heels, trying to put distance between herself and the resurrection. She hit the leg of the table. She knocked over a vase. It shattered. She didn't flinch. "You are a ghost," she gibbered. "You are a ghost come to haunt me. Go away. Go back to the water." Marcus leaned forward in the chair. The movement caused him pain. I saw him wince, but he did not stop. "I am not a ghost," he said. His voice was stronger now. It filled the room. "I am the husband you poisoned. I am the man you pushed off the rock. I am the architect whose life you tried to demolish." He pointed a shaking finger at her. "You watched me, Tiffany. You stood on the cliff and you watched me struggle. You saw my head go under. You saw my hand reach up. And you turned away. You checked your watch." Tiffany shook her head frantically. "No, No. I tried to help. I screamed for help. Liar Marcus roared. The sound tore at his throat. He coughed a wet, painful sound. Dante put a hand on his shoulder to steady him. You laughed, Marcus whispered. When the water went over my face, you laughed. I heard you. I saw your smile. It was the last thing I saw before the dark took me. Tiffany began to weep. It was not a cry of remorse. It was the cry of a child who has been caught. It was the cry of a narcissist who realizes the mirror is broken. Rico, she sobbed. Rico said it was finished. He sent me the photo of the fire. Rico is a businessman, I said, stepping forward. I stood next to my son. We were a united front. The accountant and the architect, the past and the future. Rico realized that a dead Marcus was worth $50,000. I continued. But a live Marcus held in a cage, was worth whatever he wanted to ask. He played you, Tiffany. He took your money. He kept my son in a hole in the ground, and he waited for you to get comfortable. Where is he? Tiffany whispered. Where is Rico? Marcus smiled. It was a grimacing, painful smile. He is in a room without windows, Tiffany, just like you are about to be. Agent Vance stepped into the center of the room. She closed the file on the table. The sharp snap of the folder was the sound of a gavel falling. Enrico Salvatore was arrested 3 hours ago in Honolulu, Vance said. He was trying to board a boat to the Philippines. He had your wire transfer records on his phone. He had the texts you sent him, the ones where you asked if I suffered. Tiffany looked up at Vance. The blood drained from her face, leaving her gray and ashen. He talked, she asked. He sang, Vance said. He gave us everything, the planning, the payments, the water bottle with the sedative. He gave us the location of the cave. He gave us you. Tiffany looked at me. She looked at Marcus. She looked at the urn on the mantel. She realized then that there was no way out. There was no Paris. There was no $5 million. There was no house. There was only the truth. And the truth was a wheelchair in the middle of her living room. She stood up slowly. She wiped her face. She tried to pull the shreds of her dignity around her like a cloak. It was an accident, she said. Her voice was flat. Dead. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. You signed the affidavit, I reminded her. You swore you saw him die. You swore you recovered the body. That is not panic, Tiffany. That is premeditation. Marcus looked at her. He looked at the woman he had married, the woman he had promised to love and cherish. Why? He asked. It was a simple question. It carried the weight of the world. Why, Tiffany? We had everything. I gave you everything. She looked at him. Her eyes flashed with a sudden cold anger. Everything wasn't enough, she spat. You were boring, Marcus. You were safe. You wanted to build houses and have barbecues. I wanted the world. I wanted to fly. And you were an anchor, a heavy, boring anchor, she sneered. I didn't hate you. I just outgrew you, and you were worth more dead than you were alive. $5 million buys a lot of freedom. The cruelty of the words hung in the air. She wasn't sorry. She was just annoyed that her investment hadn't paid off. Marcus nodded slowly. He closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, the love was gone. The hurt was gone. There was only indifference. You wanted to fly, he said softly. He looked at Agent Vance. Book her. Vance pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from her belt. They clicked open. Tiffany Booker, she said. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of Marcus Booker, for conspiracy to commit capital murder, for wire fraud, for insurance fraud, for grand larceny. Tiffany did not resist. She held out her hands. She looked at me. You did this, she whispered. You old devil. You ruined everything. I leaned on my cane. I looked her in the eye. I did not ruin anything, Tiffany. I just balanced the ledger. Vance clicked the cuffs shut. The sound was final. You tried to delete my son, I said. You tried to erase him. But you forgot the first rule of accounting. What rule? She sneered. There is always a paper trail, I said, and eventually someone has to pay the bill. 2 uniformed officers entered the room. They took Tiffany by the arms. She did not look back at Marcus. She looked at the house. She looked at the furniture she hadn't sold yet. She looked at the life she was losing. They marched her out the door. Marcus watched her go. He let out a long breath. He slumped in the chair. Is she gone? He asked. She is gone, son, I said. He reached out his hand. I took it. His grip was weak, but it was there. Welcome home, I said. He looked at the empty spot where the piano used to be. We have a lot of work to do, Dad, he said. I smiled. We have time, I said. We have all the time in the world. The resurrection was complete. The ghost had returned to flesh, and the woman who tried to make him a memory was now just a number in a federal file. The handcuffs were not on her wrists yet. Agent Vance had reached for them, but Tiffany moved with the desperate, explosive energy of a creature that sees the slaughterhouse door opening. She spun on her heel, her bare feet gaining traction on the hardwood floor. She did not run toward the front door where the police were waiting. She ran toward the kitchen, toward the back entrance, toward the garden where she had planned to pose for photos with the new buyer. She moved fast. She knocked over a dining chair, sending it crashing into the path of the officers. She scrambled over the Persian rug, her breathing ragged, her eyes wide and feral. "Stop her!" Agent Vance shouted. I did not move. I did not chase her. I stood by my son's wheelchair and watched. I knew the layout of my house, I knew the locks, and I knew who was waiting in the backyard. Tiffany hit the kitchen swinging door with her shoulder. It burst open. We heard her footsteps slapping against the tile. We heard the frantic fumbling with the deadbolt on the patio door. The lock clicked. The sliding glass door whooshed open. She burst out into the cool morning air. She thought she had made it. She thought she could sprint across the lawn, jump the fence, and disappear into the alleyway. But she made it exactly 3 steps onto the patio before she stopped. Through the kitchen window, I saw her freeze. Her hands went up in the air. She began to back up slowly, retreating into the kitchen. 2 uniformed officers stepped into the frame. Their hands were on their holsters. They did not need to draw their weapons. Their presence was a wall of blue steel. "Back inside, ma'am," one of them ordered. His voice was muffled through the glass, but the command was absolute. Tiffany stumbled backward into the kitchen. She backed up until she hit the island counter. She was trapped. The officers followed her in filling the space, blocking the light. Agent Vance walked into the kitchen from the dining room. I followed her, my cane tapping a steady rhythm on the floor. Marcus wheeled himself to the doorway to watch. Tiffany looked at the police in the yard. She looked at Agent Vance. She looked at Marcus. She realized there was no physical escape. The perimeter was sealed, so she tried the only escape route she had left. She tried to change the narrative. She fell to her knees on the kitchen floor. She clasped her hands together. She forced tears into her eyes. It was a performance she had given a dozen times before, but this time the audience wasn't buying tickets. "It wasn't me," she sobbed. Her voice trembled, pitching up into a plea for mercy. "It was Rico. He forced me. He made me do it." She looked at Marcus. She crawled toward his wheelchair. "Marcus, baby, please listen to me. Rico is a monster. He called me 3 months ago. He said he had compromising photos of me from college. He was blackmailing me. I sent him the money to keep him quiet. I did it to protect you. I did it to protect our reputation." Marcus looked down at her. His face was a mask of stone. He did not speak. She continued talking faster, weaving a new web of lies. "And in Hawaii? He followed us. He grabbed me on the beach. He told me that if I didn't drug you, if I didn't help him, he would kill both of us. I was terrified, Marcus. I put the powder in your water because he had a gun pointed at me from the trees. I thought he was just going to knock you out and rob us. I didn't know he was going to throw you in. I tried to stop him. I screamed, but he threatened to kill your father." She pointed a shaking finger at me. "He said he would come to Chicago and kill Elijah if I said a word. That's why I lied to the police. That's why I forged the will. I was trying to get the money to pay him off so he would leave us alone. I did it for us, Marcus. I am a victim here." It was a brilliant lie. It covered the money transfers. It covered the silence. It painted her as a tragic heroine forced into crime by a violent man. If I didn't know better, if I didn't have the data, I might have hesitated. But I had the data. I walked over to the kitchen island. I placed my phone on the granite countertop. It was a simple black rectangle, but it held the blade that would cut her throat. "You are very good at this, Tiffany," I said. My voice was quiet. It cut through her sobbing. "You almost sound like you believe it." "Elijah, please," she begged, looking up at me. "You have to believe me. Rico is dangerous. He is the mastermind." "The mastermind," I repeated. I tapped the screen of my phone. I opened the app linked to the GPS tracker I had placed under her rental car 3 days ago. The tracker that also had a built-in microphone for audio surveillance. I pressed play. I turned the volume up to the maximum. The recording was crisp. It was from 2 nights ago. The timestamp was 11:42 p.m. Tiffany was in her car parked outside the hotel. She was alone. She was making a call. Her voice filled the kitchen. It was not the voice of a victim. It was not the voice of a terrified wife. It was the voice of a CEO screaming at an incompetent employee. "Rico, you idiot, where is the body?" The voice on the phone shrieked. There was a pause in the recording silence from the other end, then Tiffany speaking again. "I do not care about the currents. I paid you $50,000 for a corpse, not a mystery. I need him found, washed up on the rocks, so I can close the file. Why isn't he dead yet? I watched you throw him in. He was unconscious. How hard is it to drown a man who can't swim?" Another pause. "Do not threaten me, Rico. You are hired help. You are the muscle. I am the brains. If he surfaces alive, you go down alone. I will burn you. I will tell the cops you stalked us. I will bury you. Just find him and finish it." I stopped the recording. The silence that followed was absolute. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Tiffany stared at the phone. Her face had gone slack. The tears had stopped instantly. There was no point in crying anymore. The audio had stripped her naked. It revealed the hierarchy. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the pawn. She was the boss. She looked at Marcus. He was looking at her with a mixture of horror and pity. "You watched me," Marcus whispered. "You stood there and you waited for me to die. And when I didn't die fast enough, you called him to complain." Tiffany scrambled to her feet. The plea for mercy vanished. The mask of the grieving widow dissolved. In its place was pure, concentrated rage. Her face twisted into a snarl. She looked ugly. She looked like the demon she was. She lunged at me. "You old bastard," she screamed. She grabbed a heavy ceramic bowl from the counter and raised it to strike. "You wired my car. That is illegal. That is inadmissible." Agent Vance moved faster than I thought possible. She stepped in front of me and caught Tiffany's arm in midair. She twisted it behind her back. Tiffany dropped the bowl. It shattered on the floor, shards of pottery flying everywhere. The two uniformed officers swarmed her. They slammed her against the refrigerator. They forced her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked. This time there was no escape. "Get off me!" Tiffany shrieked. She kicked at the officers. She spat at Agent Vance. She was fighting like a wild animal. "You ruined everything," she screamed at me, straining against the cuffs. "You were supposed to be stupid. You were supposed to be senile. You sat there drooling in your chair while I planned my future. You tricked me. I tricked you," I asked. I stepped closer to her. I stood inches from her face. I could smell the sweat of her fear and the metallic tang of her adrenaline. "You are a liar," she yelled, froth gathering at the corners of her mouth. "You are a dirty, manipulative old fox. You lured me here. You made me sign those papers. You set me up." She was right. I had set her up. I had built a maze and put cheese at the end, and she had run through it blindly. Elijah Booker. She screamed my name like a curse. "You will pay for this. I will sue you. I will take this house from inside my cell. You tricked me." I leaned in. I put my lips close to her ear just like I had with the thug in the alley. I lowered my voice to a whisper that only she could hear. It was a whisper that carried the weight of every sleepless night, every tear I had shed for my wife, and every second of terror I had felt when I thought my son was dead. "No, Tiffany," I whispered. "I did not trick you. I audited you." She froze. Her breathing hitched. "You made a mistake," I continued. "You looked at me and you saw an old man. You saw a gardener. You saw a checkbook waiting to be emptied. You forgot to look at the man." I pulled back slightly so I could look into her eyes. They were wide, terrified, staring into the abyss of her own making. "I am not an accountant today, Tiffany. I am not a victim. And I am certainly not your fool." I paused. I let the words hang there. "I am a father," I said. "That is all. Just a father. And nobody, absolutely nobody, is allowed to touch my son." She stared at me. For the first time, she saw the steel beneath the gray hair. She saw the predator that had been hiding in the grass, waiting for the snake to show its head. She slumped in the officer's grip. The fight went out of her. She realized finally that she had picked a fight with a force of nature she could not comprehend. "Get her out of my kitchen," I said to the officers. "She is contaminating the air." They dragged her out. She did not scream anymore. She did not curse. She just stared at the floor, her expensive clothes disheveled, her barefoot steps dragging on the tile. They hauled her through the living room, past the fake urn, past the forged will, and out the front door into the waiting squad car. The sirens didn't wail. There was no need. The silence of the neighborhood absorbed her. I turned to Marcus. He was still sitting in the doorway. He looked at the shattered bowl on the floor. He looked at me. "She is gone, Dad," he said. "Yes," I said. "She is gone." He wheeled himself over to me. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was stronger today. "You saved me," he said. "You saved us." I looked at his bandaged arms. I looked at the dark circles under his eyes. "I balance the books, son," I said. "That is what I do." I walked to the window and watched the police car drive away. Tiffany Booker was going to a place where there were no first-class tickets and no $5 million payouts. She was going to a place where she would have a long, long time to think about the mistake of underestimating a quiet man. The judgment was rendered. The sentence had begun, and the house was finally clean. The sirens faded into the distance, taking the chaos with them. The neighbors who had been peering through their blinds with a mixture of horror and curiosity finally retreated into their own lives. The house, my house, settled into a profound stillness. It was the kind of quiet that comes after a hurricane passes, when the wind dies down and you are left to survey the wreckage to see what is still standing. I walked into the kitchen. I moved slowly, the adrenaline that had fueled me for the last week finally beginning to ebb, leaving behind a deep, aching weariness in my bones. I filled the kettle with water and set it on the stove. The flame clicked to life, a small blue circle of normalcy in a world that had gone mad. I made 2 cups of tea, Earl Grey, black, just the way Clara used to make it. I carried them into the living room. Marcus was still sitting in his wheelchair by the window. He was staring at the empty space on the floor where the Steinway piano used to be. The indentations from the heavy legs were still visible in the carpet. 4 small circles marking a loss that felt heavier than the theft of the money. He looked small. My son, the man who built skyscrapers, the man who swam channels, looked like a child who had been broken by the world. "Here," I said gently. I placed the mug on a coaster on the side table. "Drink. It will help with the shock." Marcus did not look at the tea. He did not look at me. He kept his eyes fixed on the ghost of the piano. "I am sorry, Dad," he whispered. His voice was barely audible. It was a jagged shard of sound. I sat down in my armchair. I leaned my cane against the side. I did not speak. I let him find the words. He needed to say them more than I needed to hear them. "I am so sorry," he repeated. A tear leaked out of his swollen eye and tracked through the grime on his cheek. For 5 years. For 5 years I pushed you away. I treated you like a burden. I treated you like you were invisible. You were in love, Marcus," I said softly. "No," he said. He shook his head slowly. "It wasn't love. It was weakness. I let her whisper in my ear. I let her tell me you were old, that you were out of touch, that you were jealous of our happiness. And I believed her. Because it was easier. It was easier to let her handle everything. It was easier to let her push you out than to fight for you." He turned his head. He looked at me. The pain in his eyes was raw and open. "I let her steal 5 years of our lives, Dad. 5 years I can never buy back. And then she tried to kill me. She looked me in the eye and pushed me off a cliff. And you are the one who came for me. You are the one who saved me. After everything I did to you." He broke then. He covered his face with his bandaged hands and wept. It was a deep guttural sobbing that shook his thin frame. It was the sound of a man mourning not just his marriage, but his own judgment, his own integrity. I stood up. My knees protested, but I ignored them. I walked over to him. I put my hand on the back of his neck. I felt the tension in his muscles, the heat of his shame. I squeezed gently. "Listen to me, Marcus," I said. My voice was low and firm. "Listen to your father." He looked up, his face wet with tears. "You made a mistake," I said. "You trusted the wrong person. You were blinded by a pretty face and a convincing lie. That does not make you weak. It makes you human." I knelt down so I was eye level with him. I took his hands in mine. "A man is not defined by how he falls, son. He is defined by how he stands up. You survived. You fought in that water. You stayed alive in that cave. That is not weakness. That is strength. But I have nothing left." Marcus choked out. "She took everything. The bank accounts are empty. The house. She tried to sell the house. I am 42 years old, Dad. I am crippled. I am broke. I have nothing." I smiled. It was a small, secret smile. I let go of his hands and reached into my inside jacket pocket. I pulled out my phone. "You are not broke, Marcus," I said. He looked at me confused. "What? You think I sat in the basement for 3 days just watching videos?" I asked. "You think I let her transfer $450,000 of your hard-earned money to the Cayman Islands without a contingency plan?" I tapped the screen. I opened the banking app Dante had set up for me. I held it out to him. "Look." Marcus squinted at the screen. He read the balance. His eyes widened. $450,000, he whispered. "But how?" "She wired it. I got the alert before my phone died in Hawaii. It was gone." "It was gone," I agreed, "for about 6 hours. But you forget who your cousin is. And you forget what I used to do for a living." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the street where the police had taken Tiffany away. When Tiffany initiated the transfer to the shell company, I said she used a routing number that Dante was monitoring. We didn't stop it immediately. We let it go through. We let her think she was safe. We let her see the confirmation code. I turned back to him. But before the funds could settle in the offshore account, Dante executed a mirror command. He used a backdoor in the holding bank's server, a vulnerability I identified in an audit 10 years ago and never reported. He reversed the polarity of the transaction. I walked back to him. The money never actually landed in the Caymans, Marcus. It bounced. It sat in a digital limbo for 24 hours, a holding pattern that looked like a completed transfer to her, but was actually a secure escrow account controlled by me. I tapped the phone again. And this morning, while she was screaming at the FBI agent, I authorized the release. "The money is back in your primary savings account. Every penny, plus interest." Marcus stared at the phone. He scrolled through the transaction history. Returned, verified, available. You hacked the bank?" he asked, incredulous. "I audited the thief," I corrected. "And that is not all," I continued. I sat down on the arm of the sofa. Tiffany thought I was a poor old man living on a pension. She thought the only thing of value here was this house and your salary. She treated me like a liability. I reached into my pocket again and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. My ledger. "I never told you this, Marcus, because I wanted you to build your own way. I wanted you to have the pride of the self-made man. I didn't want you to be a trust fund kid." I opened the notebook to the last page. I showed him the figure written in my neat, precise handwriting. $2.2 million, Marcus read aloud. His voice shook. "That is my liquid capital," I said, "accumulated over 40 years of forensic accounting, consulting for the government, and very conservative investing, plus 3 rental properties in Zurich and London that your mother and I bought in the 80s. Marcus looked at me. He looked at the cane. He looked at my old suit. You are a millionaire," he whispered. "I am comfortable," I said with a shrug. "But you drive a 12-year-old Buick," he said. "You clip coupons. You fix your own plumbing." "Because I like fixing my own plumbing," I said. "And because money is a tool, Marcus. It is ammunition. You do not fire your ammunition at the sky just to hear the noise. You save it for the war." I closed the notebook. Tiffany saw a senile old man. She saw a victim. She didn't see the war chest. She didn't see the arsenal. Marcus shook his head. He started to laugh. It was a weak, watery laugh, but it was real. "She thought she was robbing a pauper," he said, "and she was trying to rob a bank vault. She was trying to rob my son," I said fiercely. "And that is a crime that carries a penalty higher than any court can impose." I put the notebook away. "So you see, son, you are not starting from zero. You have your money back. You have this house which belongs to us, not her. And you have me." Marcus wiped his face with his sleeve. He looked at the empty space on the floor again. "We can get the piano back," I said. "I know where she sold it. I have the receipt. I will send Dante to the pawn shop this afternoon. We will have it back before dinner." Marcus looked at me. His eyes were clear now. The despair was receding, replaced by a profound gratitude. "Dad," he said. "I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," I said. "Just heal." I stood up. "I am going to make some sandwiches," I said. "We haven't eaten all day." And then we are going to sit here and we are going to listen to jazz. And we are going to plan the renovation of this house. We need to get the smell of her perfume out of the curtains. Marcus smiled. It was a tired smile, but it reached his eyes. Yeah, he said. We should paint the walls. She hated blue. I want to paint them blue. Then blue it is, I said. I walked toward the kitchen. My step was lighter than it had been in years. The cane tapped a cheerful rhythm on the floor. The invader was gone. The thief was in chains. My son was safe. And the old accountant. The old accountant still had a few tricks up his sleeve. I turned back at the kitchen door. Marcus, I said. Yeah, Dad. Next time you meet a woman, I said, let me run a background check first. Marcus laughed, a real loud laugh that echoed in the empty room. Deal, he said. I went into the kitchen to make lunch. The rebuilding had begun, and this time the foundation was going to be solid rock. The cemetery was quiet in the early morning light. The dew was still heavy on the grass, shimmering like thousands of tiny diamonds. It had been 2 weeks since Tiffany was arrested. 2 weeks since my house stopped feeling like a crime scene and started feeling like a home again. I walked slowly along the gravel path, my cane tapping a gentle rhythm. I wasn't using it for support anymore, just habit. Marcus walked beside me. He was still using a crutch, his leg not fully healed, but he moved with a new strength. He wasn't the broken man I had pulled out of the cave. He was healing. The bruises were fading from yellow to non-existent. The haunted look in his eyes was replaced by a quiet resolve. We stopped in front of a simple granite headstone. Clara Booker, beloved wife and mother. I knelt down my knees, protesting less than usual in the warm sun. I placed a bouquet of white lilies on the grass, her favorites. Hello, Clara, I whispered. I brought him home. I reached out and touched the cold stone. It felt solid, permanent. Unlike the lies that had swirled around us for the last 2 years. You were right, I said to the stone. You always told me that Marcus had a good heart, but that he needed to learn to see the darkness in people. Well, he learned. It was a hard lesson, my love. A brutal lesson, but he learned. Marcus stepped forward. He leaned on his crutch and looked down at his mother's name. Hi, Mom, he said. His voice was thick with emotion. I'm sorry I haven't been here in a while. I got lost. But Dad found me. He looked at me. He smiled. It was the smile of the boy who used to run to me with a scraped knee, knowing I would fix it. She would have been proud of you, Dad, he said. I stood up, brushing the grass from my trousers. She would have been furious that I let it go on for so long, I corrected. But she would be glad we are standing here today. We stood in silence for a moment, listening to the wind in the trees. It was a peaceful sound, a cleansing sound. Do you think she knew? Marcus asked. About the money, about your past. She knew everything I said. She was the one who encouraged me to start the consulting firm after I left the bureau. She was the one who managed the properties in Europe. She was my partner, Marcus, in every sense of the word. We built that safety net together, not for us, but for you, because we knew the world could be cruel. Marcus nodded slowly. I never knew, he said. I thought you were just Dad, the guy who liked jazz and gardening. I chuckled. I am that guy, son. But I am also the guy who knows how to spot a fake signature from across the room. We are all more than one thing. We turned and walked back toward the car. The sun was higher now, warming my face. We drove back to the house in silence, but it was a comfortable silence. The tension that had defined our relationship for the last 5 years was gone, evaporated like mist. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. The for sale sign was gone, ripped out of the lawn by Marcus himself the day he came home. The windows were open, letting in the fresh air. The smell of Tiffany's perfume was finally fading, replaced by the scent of coffee and sawdust. We spent the afternoon in the garden. It had been neglected while I was playing the part of the frail old man. Weeds had encroached on the rose bushes. The hydrangeas were thirsty. I handed Marcus a pair of pruning shears. Start with the dead wood, I instructed. Cut it back to the healthy stem. You have to be ruthless with the rot if you want the plant to bloom. Marcus took the shears. He looked at the overgrown bush. He hesitated for a second, then made a clean, decisive cut. The dead branch fell to the ground. Like that, he asked. Exactly like that, I said. It hurts the plant for a moment, but it saves it in the long run. We worked side by side for hours. We didn't talk much about Tiffany or Rico or the trial that was coming. We talked about the soil, we talked about the rain, we talked about the future. Marcus told me he was thinking of starting his own firm, smaller, more focused on sustainable design. He wanted to build things that lasted, things that worked with nature, not against it. I think that is a fine idea, I said, digging my hands into the rich, dark earth. And if you need an investor, I know a guy. Marcus laughed. I might take you up on that, but this time everything is on the books. No secrets, I agreed. Just honest work. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the lawn, we sat on the porch bench. My muscles ached, a good, honest ache from physical labor. I wiped the dirt from my hands. I looked at my son. He was watching the sunset, a look of peace on his face that I hadn't seen in years. He was scarred, yes. He was changed, but he was whole. He turned to me. Dad, he said, you saved my life, but you also saved my soul. I was drowning long before she pushed me in the water. I was drowning in debt, in lies, in a life that wasn't mine. You pulled me out. I put my arm around his shoulders. That is what fathers do, Marcus. We watch the water, and when we see our children go under, we dive in, no matter how deep, no matter how dark. He leaned his head on my shoulder. I love you, Dad. I love you too, son. We sat there until the stars came out. The fireflies began to dance in the grass. The sound of the city was a distant hum. I thought about the journey. The 3 a.m. call, the fake ashes, the cave in Hawaii, the confrontation in the kitchen. It felt like a lifetime ago, and yet the scars were still fresh. But scars are just reminders. They are proof that you survived, proof that you fought. I looked at the house behind us. It was sturdy. It was strong. It had weathered the storm, just like us. I stood up. I walked to the edge of the porch and looked out into the darkness. I thought about all the people out there who were going through what I had gone through, all the parents being marginalized, all the elderly being underestimated, all the people who were being told they were useless, weak, or senile. I turned to face the camera. I looked directly into the lens. I let my face relax. I let the mask drop completely. I was not the victim. I was not the kindly old grandfather. I was the survivor. Many people mistake silence for weakness and gray hair for senility. They think that because you are old, you are blind to their greed. But they forget that old trees have the deepest roots. I spent my life protecting my family from the wolves outside, only to find the most dangerous wolf was sleeping in our guest room. Never let your love blind you to disrespect, and never ever assume that a quiet man doesn't know how to start a war. Protect your legacy not just with money, but with the wisdom to know who truly deserves a seat at your table. We often mistake silence for weakness, and age for obsolescence. They looked at my trembling hands and saw a victim. They should have looked at my eyes and seen the auditor. I spent 40 years hunting criminals in boardrooms only to find the worst kind sleeping down the hall. Love is unconditional, but trust. Trust must be audited every single day. Do not let the people you raised or the people they married destroy what you built. Stand your ground. Protect your own. And never forget, a ledger always balances eventually, whether with money or with justice. If you enjoyed watching The Old Accountant Balance the Books, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served cold. Let me know in the comments. Would you have forgiven your son, or was the betrayal too deep? See you in the next story.